What's going on with that PPP? You done a lot of talking, not a lot to see. Up in the millions like 2.3, but Geoff got it all, getting off scot-free. Try to talk tips like we talking about stock, but you're talking about men printed on called stock. When you open your mouth, I take it with a grain of salt, cause the market's down and you're a clown, it's all your fault. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. Did you dip, Geoff? I think you dipped, Geoff. What you talking about? I don't think you dipped yet. Willie's doing shady shit like the GOBs, like his whole failed thing with them NFTs, taking money from the people to pay. Most of them are broke, but that's okay, he's getting money. Even better, tax-free, loving all the stimulus from PPP. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit.
B-side on the beat.
What's going on with that PPP? You done a lot of talking, not a lot to see. Up in the millions like 2.3, but Geoff got it all, getting off scot-free. Try to talk tips like we talking about stock, but you're talking about men printed on called stock. When you open your mouth, I take it with a grain of salt, cause the market's down and you're a clown, it's all your fault. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. Did you dip, Geoff? I think you dipped, Geoff. What you talking about? I don't think you dipped yet. Willie's doing shady shit like the GOBs, like his whole failed thing with them NFTs, taking money from the people to pay. Most of them are broke, but that's okay, he's getting money. Even better, tax-free, loving all the stimulus from PPP. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit.
What is going on with that PPP? The song just hits a little harder when we've got Geoff Wilson, sports card investor, under the spotlight again as his story surrounding his not one, but $2 million in PPP loans comes under question again as the story shifts, the tides change, but we're still somehow being liars and not telling the truth over here at Sports Card Radio. Our story has been the same about Geoff Wilson since day one. His lifestyle took a major turn when he got his PPP loans forgiven by the United States government. And we thought it was a little weird that he went from suggesting buying Will Grier cards to cards that cost in excess of $2 million. He started going on vacations around the country as many were still trying to get past the COVID-19 pandemic. He got down on his couch, practically begging you guys, saying that the two companies, referring to his 352 marketing company and his sports card investor business, were, quote, two separate businesses. Two separate businesses. And then we come to find out this week that they're not separate. He sent over a 30-some-odd page lawsuit a long time ago that we have long laughed at and cried about. Many people in the comments saying that we needed to lawyer up, there were several podcasts out there. One was hosted by a guy named Carlos. The other one piggybacks on the popularity of Luka, Tiger, and LeBron, saying that we needed to be telling the truth, that we better have our facts straight, that we better know the ins and out of Geoff's business. Well, as it turns out, as the world turns, Sports Card Radio is finding out new information, and Geoff Wilson is the one that doesn't have his facts straight. Geoff Wilson is the one that is changing the story. Geoff Wilson is the one, even to this day, is trying to explain how Sports Card Investor and 352 actually aren't two separate companies. And in fact, they shared employees, and his marketing company essentially built his Sports Card Investor app. We'll go through the details on today's show. Later in the show, be joined by none other than Dan the Card Man. But until then, we are joined by super producer Tim in the background, going through the comments, and none other than Ryan, who is at Sports Card News on Twitter. I'm not sure if you're on Threads.
Oh, Threads. That's why they want to fight. Now we figured out why Elon and Mark want to fight.
Oh yeah, they're going to war over that.
Yeah.
Mark said some spicy things on Threads today
Ooh,
in relation to the fight. So
I got to get over
I think
there.
it's going to go down. Ryan, what is going on with that PPP?
Yeah, we're not going to mess around. Look, we got a response today from Geoff Wilson. We'll get through that. We'll read that in an entirety. We'll go through that for you guys. Hey, we'll give him a chance to have his say, explain himself. But the fact of the matter is we had a material change in fact. Going back to this story from 6 months ago when people were talking about Geoff and his PPP loan. So briefly, while we get the chat fired up today on Sports Card Radio, let me, for the people who are not aware of this story, let me just try to give you, as best I can, a high level overview of how we got here today. And then we're going to get to Geoff's statement, what he said, and get into that. And again, Dan the Card Man is coming on, and we'll get his thoughts on this as well. Market Movers, Geoff Wilson's Market Movers app launches 2/15/2020. That's when this video came out, right before COVID. If you guys remember, the NBA suspended play about a month after this. So COVID hits everybody. Everybody's scared. Everybody's terrified. 2-3 weeks after that, Donald Trump, who was president at the time, signed the CARES Act, which had the PPP loan details in it. PPP stands for Payment Protection Program, which basically was a loan from the government to businesses to pay their employees so that the businesses didn't have to lay them off, because there was a lot of uncertainty at that time. People didn't know what was going to happen, especially if you had a small business, big business. It didn't matter what kind of business. Everybody was terrified. So, hey, instead of everybody getting laid off and then being a real screwed up situation, government funneled money to businesses, said, hey, you have to use this to pay your employees and keep them employed until we figure out what the hell's going on. The loans were ultimately forgiven, which means the businesses didn't have to pay these things back, and they were paid for by U.S. taxpayers. So what a hell of a deal if you got one of these things. Better than cash, because if you had good employees, you should be able to spin off the money you got from the PPP loan to incredible wealth. And that's how people were largely able to build wealth during this time, from the money the government flooded into the system. And people were able to build wealth that way, either through getting the free money or using it to pay their employees to make money. Geoff's marketing business, 352. There he is right there. There's our boy, Geoff Wilson, president and chairman. They got 2 PPP loans. Okay, the first one happened on April 10th, 2020. That is going to be a very, very important date, and we'll talk about that in a minute. He got a second loan. It's actually on the top here. It was approved on March 13th, 2021. Each were about $1.1 million, up in the millions, like 2.3. On the second PPP loan, you did have to demonstrate that your business had a 25% reduction in gross receipts during 2019 and 2020. That is right here off the SBA.gov website. Who may qualify for the second PPP loan? You had to get a first PPP loan. You couldn't have more than 300 employees. And you had to demonstrate that your business kind of tanked during COVID, which was hard to do. Hard to do for a marketing agency. We won't get into that, but kind of an interesting side note. So Jeff's business got 2 PPP loans. It becomes public in about 2022, about a year after Geoff got his second PPP loan, that Geoff got a PPP loan. And I remember people talking about it in the sports card world. We didn't make a video about it. We didn't, really care about it. But people were talking about that Geoff and his 352 business got a couple of these PPP loans. Because we've seen people get busted for PPP fraud. It's kind of a thing. If you Google it, you're going to be able to find some things. Move forward to December 2022. I think you might have made a 10-minute video where you talked for about a minute about how Geoff got a PPP loan, GA Card World got a PPP loan, Blowout Sports Cards got a PPP loan. Everybody and their brother, Leaf Sports Cards got a PPP loan. Everybody, you named a bunch of people who got PPP loans. Because that was, somebody had posted it on Instagram, and it was kind of a story in Sports Cards. And at Sports Card Radio, we like to hijack things, and we just, got on and started talking about it. The very next day, and that is this video here, it would be December 5th, 2022. Geoff makes a video, PPP loans and attack content, where he literally sits on his couch and says, "Let me set the record straight." He said, "I have 2 businesses. They were separate. One was struggling, 352. His marketing business, he said, was struggling. Says that on camera. Says it has nothing to do with Sports Card Investor. They were separate businesses and had nothing to do with each other. He said Sports Card Investor didn't need any PPP money, and they were fine. But his other business did. What's the problem, right? Other influencers basically took Geoff at face value and mimicked his talking point. 352, Sports Card Investor, separate businesses. Sports Card Radio guys don't know what they're talking about. They've obviously never ran a business. They obviously don't have multiple businesses themselves with multiple owners. They have no idea what they're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. You can't move. One talking point was you can't move money from one business to another. Geoff will actually admit that here in a minute. We'll get to that in a second, that he's actually done that. So that talking point is dead. So Geoff says separate businesses. Hey, I needed the $2 million for my 352 business because it was struggling. It has nothing to do with this. Nothing to do with market movers. Nothing to do with Sports Card Investor. That's what he said. Fast forward to December 22nd, the week of Christmas, no less. And this gets FedExed to both of our houses. So heck of a time to drop a cease and desist, whatever, lawsuit threat on somebody's head the week of Christmas. Saying that we need to go on camera and apologize to him for lying. Not just lying, he accused us of knowingly lying and intentionally lying. That he used some of his PPP money to go on vacations and buy sports cards. Dude was furious. Dude was furious in this video. So 3 weeks after this video, he sends over the lawsuit threats. And basically nothing has happened since then. It was a clear, probably pump fake by him. We had a lot of fun with it. We probably got about another half dozen videos that we got to make about, getting lawsuit threats. What a gift to the other content creators that could sit around and talk about this the week of Christmas and New Year's and all that kind of stuff. When was Geoff going to sue Sports Card Radio and blah, 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 blah. Here we are 6 months later. Still hasn't happened. And what happened this week is we had a complete fact change of what I've just told you. We actually discovered this week that 352, Geoff's business over here, actually built his entire Sports Card Investor website, actually built his entire Market Movers website. That they weren't actually entirely separate. According to Geoff, on a video he did right here on July 19th, 2020, and the date of that will become very important. 6 to 50 of his employees from 352 worked on Sports Card Investor. He name dropped 6 of them, and then he said many others. And he said he had 50 employees at 352. So anywhere from 6 to 50 people built market movers and Sports Card Investor. Now, none of that really matters, to be perfectly frank. What matters, though, and why we're here, the times it does matter is when the government was paying the payroll of the people over at 352 and or Sports Card Investor. That's when it matters, because guys, guess what? When the payroll was getting paid, guess who was paying that bill? Wasn't Geoff, wasn't Sports Card Investor. It was anybody in the United States who pays taxes watching this video. You were paying the salary of Geoff Wilson. You don't think Geoff Wilson didn't get a salary from 352? Yes, Geoff Wilson was probably getting the biggest salary. That was getting paid for by the government. So when it matters, first of all, we were told these businesses weren't the same. We were told on camera these businesses weren't the same, but Geoff had to admit that no, they actually shared employees, and they shared employees after he got the PPP loan. You remember, he starts Market Movers February 2020, before COVID. COVID happens. Geoff gets a PPP loan approved April 10th, 2020. Geoff then talks about his 352 employees on July 19th, 2020. So 3 months after U.S. taxpayers are paying for his employees, Geoff Wilson goes on and says, they've basically built my entire site. Thank you, guys. All 6 to 50 of you. This was nowhere in the fact pattern. This is nowhere in the 35 pages that we knew that there was a connection to this business.
And in fact, he basically, here's the deal, guys. And I see some of the comments. Oh, it's not illegal for him to take 352 employees and have them work on Sports Card Investor. That's not the point, dingalings. He said they were 2 separate businesses. We were lying. We didn't have the facts straight. And then we find out several months later that no, actually the 2 businesses are connected. And that several months after he got his first PPP loan, he was bragging about how that company actually built his Market Movers app. So this is what happened, guys. He got a PPP loan. And maybe the marketing business did go to shit. But guess what he did? He took taxpayers' money to build his next company. And then he lied about it. He got on the couch, and every single one of you guys believed him, like Bill Clinton or George Bush or insert your favorite politician. Every word that comes out of either the Democrat or Republican that you like, you guys believe hook, line, and sinker. And Geoff believes that about himself. He got on this couch and he said they were 2 completely separate businesses. No, they weren't 2 completely separate businesses. In fact, one, they are the same. They built his Market Movers app. And they built it after he got his PPP loans. And then he got a second one.
He says it
on video. He admits this. He sent over a 32-page. Some of you guys are wondering why we're still talking about Geoff. If somebody sends you a 30-page document saying that you're a liar, you need to apologize to me, you're stupid, you should have known this. In this document, it says multiple times, we should have known this, we should have known this, we should have known this about his business. Yet Geoff got on the couch and told us that we should know the 2 businesses were separate. completely separate. And then we find out that they're not. Guys, this is what a fucking pathological liar does. A pathological liar goes to somebody and says, right at the top, no, you're lying. You don't understand the truth. You're stupid. That's what a pathological liar does. They point the finger at somebody else and says, no, you're stupid. You don't understand the facts. You don't get it. And then they sit around like Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and then they sit down and they put on a nice shirt and they tell you what you're supposed to think. And it's often filled with lies. And when he sat down on this couch, he lied. He said that these two companies were not connected. He said that Sports Card Radio, in so many words, were just doing this for views and clicks and to gain notoriety. He got his attorneys to send over a 30-some-odd page lawsuit saying that we should have known this, we should have known this, and that these two businesses are separate. They have nothing to do with each other. And then we find out that that is not true. These two companies are one in the same. 352 built his sports card investor app. And again, this is after a PPP loan. And this is after Jeff Wilson said that these two businesses were not connected. And if somebody sends you a 30-page lawsuit saying that you're stupid, you're lying, you need to apologize for me. And then when you find out, no, he's actually the one lying. He's the one not telling the truth. So shut the fuck up in the comments that we shouldn't be talking about this. That this is not a story. If it doesn't relate to you, turn it off. Go watch some other content. Go watch Jab's family open up his 8th blaster. Go watch Card Collector 2 try to remodel his shop. Go watch Jeff Wilson tell you to buy during the top of a market. And then when the market comes down and the prices are more reasonable, he's, oh, I don't think we should sell now, guys. I think we should be collectors. If this kind of content is not for you, and your stupid fucking little peanut brain can't understand it, turn it off. He lied. And then he gets in our comments and lies again and says, nothing we say here is true. All we did was take Jeff's words. That's all we did. Jeff said the two companies were connected. Turns out they were. Jeff said he didn't take a PPP loan for Sports Card Investor. Oh, but he actually took one for 352 and used it to build his Sports Card Investor site. And if what we were saying isn't true, he should have sued us. But what's going to happen, guys, is Jeff is digging himself a hole to where we actually have a case against him. He knows the truth. Our lawyers can go and find those employees. We can track down those pay stubs. We can look into the accountant. We can see if the timetable of an event. This is why he's never going to sue us. This is why he tried to scare us to stop talking about this subject. This is what a pathological liar does. They point the finger at somebody and say, you don't understand what you're talking about. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I just nutted on her dress.
What's the definition of is?
Well, exactly.
Well, let's go through his.
That's where he's gone. This is where Jeff Wilson has gone.
Let's go through his statement.
It's to a sexual relationship argument now.
Because there are some lies, just flat out kind of untruths in his statement. He says, nothing you say here is true. Here are the facts. Jeff says, when I first started Sports Card Investor in 2019, I used some 352 employees to help get it started, as I had not yet hired my own team for Sports Card Investor. This was before the pandemic PPP loan. Again, this is the first time we're hearing about this, Jeff. You sent over a 35-page document, and we literally, this is the first, I had to go find this out on my own. And then you say, hey, It was before the PPP loan, but here you are talking about it, Geoff, in July of 2020, and your loan had gotten approved
Months
3 months
later.
before. So you're talking about 352 working for you, and you had gotten your loan 3 months ago. So the timeline for you doesn't quite work out on that regard. I started hiring my own team for Sports Card Investor around the time Market Movers launched, and we saw that over here, February 2020. Again, right before the pandemic. I then phased out using 352. Well, you didn't say that over here. You didn't say that in this. You were talking about them.
And look, if we want to go to a court of law, we can find out what is phased out. Did it happen over the course of 3 months? Did it happen over the course of the next year? Did it happen before his second PPP loan was granted? Did he still have 352 employees working on Sports Card Investor after the second PPP loan? Because we know they were there during the first one. And we know he got on the couch and said that wasn't happening and that they were separate businesses. He told you guys this. And you guys lap this up like your favorite politician. Then
well, he does it again.
Comments and does it again.
352 and Sports Card Investor are separate companies and separate ownership and separate employees. In the
no, they're not.
Right. Employees.
They're not separate employees. That is a factual lie he just said there. They are not separate employees because he got on video 3 months after he got a PPP loan saying that these guys helped me build that. And in fact, in the previous paragraph of that comment, he's talking about, I started using 352 for Market Movers. And then this is what a pathological liar does, is they end up forgetting the lie. And then it just kind of compounds on itself. He literally said, I had 352 employees help get it started. And then he says down here that 352 and Sports Card Investor have separate employees. He literally contradicted himself in the same statement. This is why a guy like this got on YouTube and told you guys to buy cards, buy John Morant, buy James Harden, buy Ben Simmons, buy Will Grier. Not only buy Will Grier, but he's 4 times better than Kyler Murray. And in a comment, he says, I use my 352 employees to help Sports Card. And then 2 paragraphs later, he says that they're 2 separate companies with 2 separate employees. Hello. And we're not supposed to talk about this. We're the ones at the top saying, here are the facts. He contradicts a fact. I had some 352 employees help get it started, referring to Sports Card Investor. And then he says Sports Card Investor and 352 have separate employees. That is fucking not true. And then to go along with that, before he sent over his lawsuit, he got on the couch and told you they were separate employees. No, what happened, Geoff, is you got a PPP loan. You put that in your pocket. You got paid too. The employees at 352 got paid to work on your new business. That was flourishing. Sports Card Investor probably was doing really well during this time. You put that money into your pocket. You got paid through the PPP loan too. Owners got paid too. There was a whole stipulation about that. He probably got paid handsomely. So the government paid his employees, paid him. He switched them over to start working on another business. And then he got up and tried to say, we're lying. Oh, why are you balling out on these new cards? Why are you balling out on all these vacations all of a sudden? It was buy Will Grier, and now it's buy the most expensive Michael Jordan cards to the tune of over $2 million. And we haven't even gotten to the second PPP loan, where he needed to recognize a 25% reduction in his business. And if 352 and Market Movers are working hand in hand, you guys don't think he could manipulate his revenue and the value of those employees? Of course he could.
Well, he says in the cases where 352 employees worked on Sports Card Investor, Sports Card Investor paid 352 just like any other client. I remember that was one of the people said, well, you can't just move money from one business to another. You can't guys, he did it. He did it right here. He did. Geoff did. Geoff can. If there was a shortfall, if his business at 352 was sucking, why get the second PPP loan? Why not just hire them yourself, Geoff? Instead, he took some taxpayer money and balled out like most of us probably could and would. He says your accusations that PPP funds were used fraudulently or for cards or for a sports card investor is simply false. Hey, look, we haven't gotten into the fact that Geoff Wilson got a salary. Geoff, you got PPP money because you had a salary that was paid for by U.S. taxpayers. So, of course, some of your money went to cards and probably went to sports card investor. So I don't know where you want to go with this topic. Again, it's a nuanced thing. He got a loan approved. He's talking about his employees over here 3 months later. This is the first time, this first statement, when I first started Sports Card Investor in 2019, I used some 352 employees to help get it started. First time we're ever hearing about this. Nowhere in this 35-page document is that even mentioned. If we had known this from the rip, we probably would have crushed this guy harder. Instead of a 5-part special, probably been about 25-part special, because you can really link the two businesses together. You could really get into the fraud that could have been committed. The fact that these two businesses are now very well linked, not just from the owner owning it. He had employees working here. He had 6 to 50 employees. At least 6, but up to 50 employees. He says he phased it out right around COVID. But again, he's over here talking about the employees 3 months after the PPP loan got approved.
And months after the site launched.
And then goes and accuses us of lying. He said we defamed him. We knowingly and intentionally lied about him. Defamatory statements about Geoff Wilson. And only now are we finding out the connection between these two businesses. He's actually lucky we're just finding out about this now. If I had known about this back 6 months ago, I would have crushed this guy even harder. Crushed this motherfucker. His business that supposedly was struggling, built his market movers, built Sports Card Investor, needed 2 PPP loans. Then you went over here and spent $2.5 million on cards conveniently from 4/2/2020 through 11/2020. $2.5 million on cards. Dan the Card Man joins us. Time for a fresh perspective here.
How's it going, boys? How you doing?
Screen right. We're trying to get our screen right here.
I'm just messing around. Dan the Card Man, how are you doing?
I'm good. You guys can hear me? All good?
We can hear you.
We got
Perfect.
you, buddy.
Been following the live. Pretty good chat so far.
Yeah, you know.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on the? Maybe you've listened. Maybe you've maybe you've heard about that. Dan, have you heard about the Geoff Wilson PPP story?
Yeah, I have. So I was listening in for the first 30 minutes on this one as well. I think everyone's heard about it at this point, right? So I'm looking at it through an auditor's lens because this is my bread and butter kind of thing. And I think what you touched on a bit earlier, Colin, is key. I think the pay slips and the bank transactions and understanding how that relationship actually worked, obviously it's going to be in writing. That's going to be the proof that sort of either proves him right or wrong. And I think that's the point we're at, where we sort of need to see that in order to talk about next steps and things like that, because dates and commenting on phased out, like you said, could mean anything, but then the proof is going to be in the pudding, right? The dates are going to prove everything. So if he's that adamant, which he seems to be, just show us the invoice, show us the pay slips, and that sort of squashes everything. Or if not, maybe he doesn't want to show it because then it's going to expose more issues than not, right? So that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, and look, that this is why, that's why when we were talking about this, and there was like multiple podcasts getting on and like pointed at us, being like, "Oh, the sports card radio guys better be telling the truth," and this, that, and the other. It's like, no, guys, Geoff Wilson better be the one that's telling the truth, because he can actually go to jail. You can go to jail for what he did. There are, and it's not me just saying this, there are people getting multiple year sentences. Now, they don't tend to be white, which is, look, that's the reality of the United States. But we have seen multiple people that balled out on their PPP loans go to prison. Okay? If we just happen to be guilty of defaming Geoff Wilson, he would have to prove some kind of damages. Okay? It's not just that we defamed him. It'd have to be damages. And a guy with a larger YouTube channel, probably self-admittedly a larger bank account, a larger following, self-proclaims him one of the greatest investors of all time. I don't really see a way that he could actually prove actual damages. And if they are, I probably could take a couple links off a watch and pay the damages. Okay. He could go to jail for lying about this. He can go to jail, and it's very easy at this point to understand it. As a professional auditor says, we can go to the employees. We can find the pay stubs. We can go to the IRS. All of this would be fair game in a lawsuit. And so anybody out there that says we're scared of Geoff Wilson for a lawsuit, bring it on, baby. This would be amazing. Be amazing content, and we'd actually find out the truth, because Geoff Wilson has not been providing the truth.
Yeah, I think if you look at through, the approval process for the PPP loans, we had a similar thing here in Australia that I've had lots of colleagues be associated with. It's no surprise that they're rife with fraud, people lying, like you just said. The information you need to provide for those wasn't always super clear. But at the same time, I think, again, getting us those pay slips, highlighting that information will clear things up really quickly, right? And I think my message to Geoff, like I said in the video today, is to maybe take the emotion out of the situation and just present the facts, right? I think that's sort of going to clear things up. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's where other questions come, in my opinion. But it's not just getting pay slips. Also, we need to understand what the working relationship was between the employees, right? Because you can say they are two separate businesses, but in reality, if you've got your employees working a full work week on something, does that then count as a separate business? You need to then show invoices between the two companies, all that kind of thing. So there's lots of questions. I think there's more questions than not at the moment, and I'd like to get to the answer of them. Raul from AOH Sports did a really good video on this today as well. Talked about very similar things. He's also an accountant, not an auditor, but our minds are pretty much aligned with how we think through things. So I think that's what we need to see, because like I said, there's a lot more questions than not at the moment. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. We just need answers at the moment, because that's a pretty big problem to have, right? Pretty big accusation to sort of take, that kind of money and then all of a sudden start buying sports cards, right? That's a pretty big deal. And I think it should be treated like that from him. He needs to take it seriously and give us, the outcome. I think I said in a video the other day, okay, he might not like the fact that he has to do that. From his perspective, this might be complete ridiculousness. He might think people are going after him, but you're a very influential person in this space. You have 250,000 subscribers. You're at the forefront. You're almost a landing page for collectors, new collectors as well. You need to sort of bite the bullet and do things that you're maybe not super happy to do. So that's my line of thinking on it.
If he wanted to come on Dan the Card Man, would you interview him? What kind of stuff would you ask him?
Yeah, I'd want to do that. I think I've messaged him before in the past. It's sort of fallen through, but those are the kinds of questions I'd ask him. I think I spoke to this in a video yesterday as well. Aside from the PPP loans, I'd like to understand a little bit more about how he's presented his viewpoint on the hobby. But in terms of the PPP loans specifically, I'd want to understand, okay, what did that relationship look like? How were these employees paid? What was the timing of the PP loans coming in? When did you pay your employees? How many hours did they work? Were they invoiced? Was that invoice that you issued to 352 in line with your other invoices, or were you undercutting your employees to save money? There's all these kinds of things, right? Those are the questions I'd want answers to. And those are the questions that any auditor would come in and sort of ask. Now, you mentioned as well, Colin, around the audits for PPP loans. I don't think they're going to be robust enough to find issues with this kind of thing, because you're talking about small businesses that have really shitty payroll processes, maybe one or two people in there that don't have appropriate segregation of duties. Policies and procedures are quite poor, so that stuff is easy to fudge. And, having colleagues here in Australia work on very similar things for some of our businesses, there was a lot of fraud happening within that 100%, I know firsthand. And some of the, hanky-panky that some of these banks themselves helped facilitate some of these loans is pretty scary to think about, and a pretty big bubble, in my opinion, that we haven't seen the effects of just yet. But that's
Did
essentially
you-
what I dig deep on him for.
Well, you mentioned the other part, kind of him, more card specific.
Yeah.
What would you ask him about kind of being an influencer and kind of manipulating the market, maybe in his own kind of way, with his position in the hobby?
I'd want to sort of dig a bit deeper on how much did he actually know about vintage cards at the time, because if you look at his early content, it was very targeted towards, base rookies and all that kind of thing, and a lot of his videos were targeted towards that kind of message. So could that be him being new to the hobby and him being ignorant and not knowing any better? Or was he aware of that in the background, acquiring things like vintage cards or things like that? Or was he just pushing that message of new cards to try and make money from people through his app and then also through flipping those cards himself? Because, many people that have been around the hobby a long time, like you guys have, like I have, like, people in the comments, when you're hearing guys push prison base and things like that, you get red flags immediately. And I don't think enough people were asking the questions, and then the concern comes from the guys pushing that message. Was that intentional? Were you lying to your viewers just to get view counts, or did you actually mean that? And if you did mean that, maybe you shouldn't be calling yourself, an investor, because that stuff doesn't work long term. That's where my mind goes on that and what I try and dig a bit deeper on.
Let me try to add this back to the screen. Because I did want to talk to you about. Did you have any, Dan? I wanted to give you a moment. Did you have anything else to say about Geoff Wilson?
No, I think that's it. Like, I want more information. So I'm pretty balanced. And again, I'm an auditor, but I just want to see the additional information, right? Because I think this could be really bad, right? And the optics of this are horrendous. Just give us more information and then let us make, a proper decision on it. But it doesn't look good, especially with the things you highlighted a bit earlier around, his wording and maybe backtracking or not disclosing certain things. That's not good, and it gives me more concern than not, in my opinion.
I think it's, if I were Geoff, if Geoff's probably watching, Geoff, I would just stop talking about it, bro. If I were you, I mean, this kind of came out of left field that I was able to find this information, but just the dates, the dates are very questionable to me. Dan, I wanted to ask you, you've done a lot of videos lately. You're talking about influencers today. You're talking about these backdoor cards, which I want to get to a couple different times. You're talking about rigged boxes. We did have a situation where there was a couple of these Lamar Jackson cards that come up, and we see this in the hobby a lot of times. These expensive cards that sell, this one sold for $8,000. This one sold for $19,000. Collectors spend a lot of money on these cards. And, they want to get the one of one. And it turns out that if you actually zoom in and look at these cards, these are the same freaking card. Or should be the same card. It's labeled Tremendous Treasures, one of one, Lamar Jackson, but they're not the same card. These are actually two different cards. Yep. The stitching's different. The background's different right here. Talk to me a little bit about this. I watched your videos. I've been following the story. I think this is still a hobby mystery that we have going on here with these cards. But maybe give people who haven't heard about this yet, what the heck is going on with these Lamar? And this is just one example. This has happened before in the hobby, but maybe lay down what is going on here so that collectors know about it and they can be aware about it. Yeah,
so duplicate cards have always been a thing. So this one popped off, I want to say, a few weeks ago because we had a breaker. It was the not Tremendous Treasures version, because that's a second duplicate, but the rookie material signatures basically hit the card in a break. And then there's a pretty big sports card channel called If Sports Cards that basically said this was a hit of the week. When I searched the price, I realized there was a second copy of this out there. Doing a bit of research on it, lots more questions came up because this one that you're showing on screen now popped up as a second duplicate. So at a high level, for 2018 NT for Lamar Jackson, it looks like there are duplicate shields, as you can see on screen. Now with the checklist that's on screen right now, each player is meant to have 3 one-of-ones per insert, one being the laundry tag, one being the brand logo, and then one being the NFL shield. In this case, you have duplicates of the shield for Lamar Jackson for 2 inserts. He's the only player to have this duplicate. No other player has this. To make matters, really concerning, when you look at those graded by BGS and you click on the shield, that shield looks incredibly fake and it doesn't look like any other shield in any other insert for that set of NT from that year. So The question then comes, well, there's duplicates of them. Okay, where did this error happen? Did Panini accidentally make 2 cards? Sure, that's plausible. Or did somebody maybe patch swap and then get the card graded by BGS? I don't think it's a coincidence that both the duplicate and the shitty looking shields are graded by BGS. I think maybe someone has patch swapped these from the team logo. The other thing that's pretty interesting with the rookie material signatures card, which is not the one you're showing, it's the other one that has the duplicate shield with the auto as well. Those are meant to be on the red foil. The laundry tag has been found, which is also meant to be on the red foil, but that's on the blue foil. So my theory at the moment is that Panini accidentally printed the team logo on the red foil instead of the blue foil, and then somebody's patch swapped it, is what it looks like. And then, PWCC have sold it to someone for $35,000 USD, which is not the 2 you're showing. And then through a bit more
I couldn't
research,
find
these
that
2
one.
showed up. Yeah.
I couldn't for some reason I couldn't find the other one on PWCC. I was searching for it, but I couldn't find it. Okay, so have you reached out to Panini? Have they said anything about that? Have they tried to clear this up in any kind of way?
No response from them at all. I've tried to multiple people, but my microphone's really small. I've had the conversation with PWCC. They seem to be open and they are looking into it, which is good. But again, no real response from anyone as yet, because they don't really know where the errors occurred, because Panini has run so poorly. This could be an error from Panini, right? They could have just shit the bed and made duplicate cards. Sure. I just think it's shocking that you've got two Lamar Jackson inserts in that one set that both have duplicates, and he's the only player to have duplicates, and both shields look like, straight from Etsy. So it's a weird one. I feel for the person that sold the PSA 10 with Golden, though, because they were negotiating with Golden because they reached out to me. It got listed 3 months after the one you just showed on the other screen, the BGS version. BGS version looks very fake and looks very suspect in terms of the shield. Sold for twice the price as what these other guys' one was meant to sell for. So I've not heard anything back from Golden either on this.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I wish that these companies like Panini would just come out and say, hey, that maybe there was a mistake made, or maybe some of these cards got out, or just give collectors some kind of insight. I think if they just came forward and kind of like our situation with Geoff, hey, if you just come forward from the rip and just tell everybody from the get-go, what's going on, I think people are able to forgive you and move on, and everybody's going to just still buy this stuff.
Yeah. Transparency is key, right?
Transparency is key. And then it puts any selling site in a tough spot. Check my cards, eBay, PWCC, Golden, whoever, to where it's like, yeah, these cards are showing up and they were made by Panini. They're in this freaking hard case by somebody else. And now there's questions about, is this a real patch? Is this? Now I do know maybe a grading service could offer this, but Beckett, this could be a fake patch on there, and Beckett's probably might even still slab it.
Yep.
Because all their grading are these 4 things over here: centering, corners, surface, edges.
I think this is something the manufacturers themselves should look to implement. They should image 1-of-1 cards, I think, especially cards in NT. Take a photo of them, have a database, and then let somebody, okay, this is what the card looks like from the manufacturer. That solves the problem immediately. And they won't do it because it's going to cost too much money.
I don't know if you remember this, but at a Beckett Industry Summit, Dan, this is going back probably to like 2015, 2016. Panini actually announced that they were going to put a photo database of all patch cards, and you were going to be able to scan the back of the cards. I think it was right when QR codes came out, and they thought they were going to use them, I think, a lot more than we actually do. And you were going to be able to scan a QR code on the back of this card, and it was going to take you to a database and on Panini's website, and you were going to be able to see, oh, okay, here's when it was made. Here, this is what it looked like, so on and so forth. Now that, one of the many promises by Panini that never actually came to fruition, but this is going back a number of years ago. And I think you're right. Now, I guess in some respects, the grading companies, I think it's a good idea that they take pictures of these things. The fact that these cards on Golden, we are able to actually go back and look and examine these cards and look for other cards in this set that may have been impacted. And certainly in the future, we're going to be talking about some backdoor cards here in a second. So it's like, I think personally, Dan, I don't know if you agree with this. I think the onus is on Panini to come out and just say what they might think have happened, or just come out and say, hey, we're actually not sure what happened, guys. But there are 2, it's supposed to be a 1-of-1, but there are 2 of them.
Yep, no, I agree. That's my line of thinking as well. I think maybe Golden could have done a little bit better here as well, considering they had both cards listed within 3 months of each other. If you look at PWCC's listing for the rookie material signatures version, they stated in the comments that it was, a one of one, a true masterpiece. You'll never see another one like it, which, I made a joke about because now we have 2 of them. So again, yeah, the onus has to go on Panini. They need to say something. I don't think anyone really cares if they say we fucked up.
Yeah.
Apologies for swearing, but that's what we need these businesses to do, right? You need to be transparent. Nobody cares. Just be honest, right? And when you're sitting there silent, it raises more questions than not, in my opinion.
Well, it raises, the first thing I go to is, are more of these cards being made? And if you're over here spending $19,000 on one, you want to know that this is the only one. You don't want to go over here and go on Golden or PWCC or eBay or anywhere, Instagram, and see that there's another one. I mean, that would freaking be horrible.
Especially the guy that spent 35 grand. And the problem is that the 2 that are in the BGS slabs, again, the shields in those and the material in those do not match any other player for any other insert in that set. They look so cheap compared to the other shields. So they're the 2 that are sold for a much bigger premium than the better looking shield, right? So you've either paid $35,000 USD for a card that's a duplicate or, even worse, a patch swap card that is then now worthless. So curious to see what Panini says to them. I'm curious to see what, action PWCC can make because they're sort of following up on that on behalf of the customer. But again, I'm not going to be surprised if I don't hear anything back. They said they're going to respond to me, but, people like to leave things for a while and then forget that it ever happened.
I love how our boy Platinum Card Breaks actually pulled one of these, pulled one of the cards.
So the guy who actually owns that one reached out to me because he was scared that people are going to say he was doing something to the card or anything. So he showed me the video, the invoice from 3 years ago, the amount he paid to get it graded, all this kind of information. Again, the 2 that are in the BGS holders, there's no footage of those cards being broken at all or footage of them being hit in packs.
Okay. So we don't know where those came from quite yet.
Yeah.
So it's still a hobby mystery. This Lamar Jackson card's still kind of a hobby mystery. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. My gut is it's a patch swap. Until I see the team logo get hit, my gut is it's a patch swap. Just given how shit the shields look.
Okay, we got to talk about this because this is literally my favorite story that I think I've heard in a hot minute. This showed up on Reddit, apparently. Got friended these, no clue what they are. And these are, Dan, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong. They look like, it looks like some 2023 Topps Chrome, and then we have a Bowman Chrome over here. So we have, it looks like a little bit of mix. And apparently, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong. Apparently, we've got college kids involved, working for Topps, perhaps stealing these cards, and some of these cards ending up for sale and not in packs. Like the whole freaking blueprint run of the guy doesn't end up in the pack. So this could affect breaks. This could affect if you're buying packs. This could affect all hobby shops that have a relationship and are buying this stuff. It could be that the guy you want isn't even in the product. He's on the freaking checklist, but he's not in the product because apparently some college kids gone wild. Maybe in my former state of Arizona. Tell me what the heck is going on with this.
Yeah, so this is 2-part, right? So the thread that you're showing right now on Reddit came up in April last year, so months, I think, before Bowman Chrome even came out. Topps Chrome only came out last week, I believe. So this showed up, and then people immediately thought, okay, there's a crap ton of cards here because this person spoke to having, basically every number of each of these parallels you're seeing. They got handed to it as a friend gave it to them. The question then came, okay, are these QC cards, did they get backdoored out of Topps completely? Since Bowman Chrome came out, a few more people brought this topic up again months later because they realized, well, hang on a minute, like you said, some of these parallels have not shown up. For certain players, we've not seen anything less than out of 199, right? So it then raises more questions. Put out the video the other day and somebody reached out to me and said, well, we have it on good authority that Topps leveraged college students as the contractors to oversee the signing of these cards. Now, if you guys weren't aware, some of these, and I know you guys haven't in terms of the viewers, these manufacturers leverage contractors to oversee the signing sessions, right? And that has lots of questions in and of itself, whether that's appropriate or not. But it seems that one of these college students who was probably getting paid, sweet F4 to oversee this, pocketed a few cards and then tried to offload them. So it's a pretty interesting one because, again, even with Topps Chrome having just been released, people are saying, some of these cards are not showing up. They're not even in the packs to begin with, and it seems Topps knows about it, didn't say anything about it, and they've either not put them into the packs or not said anything at all, which is really alarming in my opinion.
Where are they trying to sell them? Where are they trying to sell the cards?
eBay, Facebook, a few places. I've had people reach out to me saying they've bought them on eBay. Now, this is interesting as well because the seller is located in Arizona. Some of these cards that weren't signed, spring training was in Arizona this year. Some of those players were in attendance. So they think these guys are taking the unsigned cards and getting them signed by the athletes just based on how poor some of these autographs look and how different they would look to the traditional pen that, Topps and Panini use.
Okay, so that's very interesting. They're stealing the cards. They're not autographed. They then go find these guys at spring training or the hotel or wherever. Pretty easy to find these guys in Arizona during spring training. And then, yeah, it does. Some of these autographs look off compared to if they just signed them. That one may be okay, but this guy over here for the Royals looks off. This Superfractor, again, looks a little off.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of both in terms of like some being signed, some being not signed. I think the video that I did yesterday where I updated it, I showed the comparison side by side. The pen is like incredibly thick. It's not this one, it's the other one. You look at them side by side and the order of the player, I forget his name right now, but it looks nothing alike. So
are they real autographs? Are all of them presumed real autographs? Or are some people questioning the authenticity of the autograph?
Some are questioning the authenticity as well. There's some that people think look genuine and then others that look very questionable and likely fake.
And breaking news into Sports Card Radio, I'm assuming that Topps and Fanatics have not commented on this yet, or we have any?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And this is a pretty big thing, right? Because if you're a consumer buying this product and wanting to chase a player, we talk all the time about breakers getting loaded boxes, and that sort of ruins it for you because you're trying to win something that you were never in it to begin with. This is even worse, right? If you've got cards that are missing and you've not told anyone and you've not replaced them, that's a big bloody problem. And if you have replaced them and you've still not told anyone, that's pretty bad as well because you thinking you've got a card out of 199 when there's 199 out there that someone's stolen, that's now 1 out of 200 or 400, right? So there's like so many questions on this that they, again, need to just be transparent, come out and say, what the heck is happening? If you stuffed up, you stuffed up. Nobody cares. Just be transparent so people are aware. You trying to not talk about it thinking it's going to go away is not okay in my opinion.
It would be very easy for these cards to either get lost and or stolen. I know that the NBA Summer League is happening in Vegas here in a couple days. And if anybody goes down there, you're going to see like a Panini employee oftentimes carrying boxes of cards during the games because there's so many athletes there and people from the NBA. And it was a female the times I saw her, and she was carrying cards around, and I could see how just almost accidentally some cards could go missing or so on and so forth. And especially these younger guys who, they're younger and it might be easier for these cards to turn up. So wait, how was it found out? Question I have is, how was it found out that college kids were, or do you know how college kids, Topps hiring college kids?
My understanding was, so the people that reached out to me, I had multiple people tell me this independently, that they had conversations with people from Topps, contacts they had, and then just people word of mouth from, on the ground at Arizona. Apparently, the people that had these cards in hand, I think some questions were asked, and that's how it came out. Now, irrespective of whether they're college students or not, right, we know for a fact that these manufacturers do leverage contractors for this kind of thing. It's a pretty hard thing to fly, full-time employees around the country to oversee this kind of thing. But that's just the general consensus amongst, pretty big baseball collectors.
And I think oftentimes the rep or like his girlfriend could even become the witness to the signing. Because I've actually seen athletes, there's, it used to actually say on the back of Topps cards, hey, this card was witnessed by a top representative. Well, that representative could actually be his girlfriend sitting in the room. She just signed something and says, hey, Joe Blow signed all these cards. The guy signed something, say, hey, all these sign these. And then they sign them and send them off in a FedEx package. It's sometimes not even a Topps employee or even a college kid, overseeing these signings. I think that's how we've seen the Dak Prescott situation happen. And we've seen some of these other, fraudulent autograph situation.
This kind of thing like pisses me off a lot, right? Because one of the things I've talked to over the last 2 years is how poor the risk appetite is from some of these businesses. Now, 10 years ago, using contractors might have been fine, right? Cards weren't worth a whole lot of money, like some were, obviously, but now you've even got like shitty base cards of shitty players that are getting signed, could be worth, a few $100, right? So the fact that you're sort of still using the same process when you're happy to charge customers significantly more money to buy your product is unacceptable, right? Your risk appetite needs to match the level of revenue you're bringing in, and coming in and sort of charging that kind of money, but still paying someone $9 an hour, or whatever it is, to oversee the auto is unacceptable. And that stuff needs to change immediately, right? You can't have that kind of risk appetite persist. And that's across the board, right? It comes to the same shit that the graders do, the same thing that's like Panini does. It's across the board in this industry where businesses are happy to charge you more money or not uplift their processes to now match the level of risk in the industry. And I think that's a pretty big problem, and it's quite pervasive.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the hope is that Fanatics is going to come in here and make things more transparent. And then when you see things like the Lamar Jackson situation, we see things like Backdoor Cards, that they're going to be more vocal. And even if it's just, hey, we messed up, but we want to make you aware that we messed up and that there's these 2 Lamar Jacksons, just so that you guys know. And hey, I can't read these guys' names, but Spencer Steer's not going to have any blue parallels because they were all stolen by a college kid. I mean, they don't have to go that far, but it certainly, I think, would help. Dan, I want to ask you something. Go ahead. I
was going to say, I think more information is going to come to light because Topps Chrome was only just released, right? So if we still again don't see some of these cards coming out, then we know for sure that Topps hasn't, thought through the problem or actually solved it. And it's still going to be a pretty big thing to work through over the next few weeks.
Well, I wonder if it's just the 2 products. I mean, sometimes they're signing Inception, they're signing all these different products at once. It's not just 2. So it'd be interesting to see later in the year if there's no Bowman Sterling autographs, or I don't know the release date calendar, but these guys are going to be in 12, 15 products, and maybe a bunch of their cards are missing. Hey, for player collectors, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to go out on the open market, and I could still see how these cards are certainly desirable. People will want them. It's just now they're distributed in a totally different way.
Yep. So another shit show for the hobby, it seems, which is no surprise.
It's fun. It gives us something to talk about. I mean, we could sit out here and talk about this all day. The thing I do want to talk to you about is this box break that went down with Cade Cunningham and Packman, and I believe our boy Mojo Sports Autographs was there, and who knows who else was there.
I think it was just those 3, yeah.
Okay, I only kind of briefly looked into it. Can you give us an overview of what happened, and do you think this was rigged or not?
Yeah, so Whatnot looks like they did some kind of sponsorship with Cade Cunningham trying to chase his own autos in boxes. It was along with Packman breaks, or Packman cards, whatever it's referred to as, in Mojo Sports. So this went over a few days in terms of what they were trying to do. The big thing was going to be a case of Flawless. So I think they opened 2 boxes of Flawless. One was given to the chat. One was, for Cade to keep himself, I think. In the one that was being kept for himself, he hit the encased rookie auto of himself, which is really skeptical, right? That anytime an athlete hits their own card, let alone one of that nature, is a bit insane. He also hit a Steph Curry 1/1, if I remember correctly. And then, a day prior or a day after, he opened a few boxes of Prism with Pac-Man and hit his own auto in the Prism box as well. So you've got an athlete hitting his own card twice, which is pretty strange in my opinion.
So it was the box he got to keep. He hit a Curry 1/1 and he hit his own auto. That I guess is probably
I think it was a box that he got to keep or Pac-Man got to keep. It wasn't the one they auctioned off for the chat, is my understanding.
And this is a tough question. Do we know where the box came from? Was it a Whatnot box? Did they ever mention like how GTS or it's thanks Panini or thanks?
Not from my understanding, no.
Maybe it was a backyard break spot. No.
Yeah, potentially. But it's just odd when you've got Whatnot essentially peddling this thing, right? Because it was a huge advertisement, marketing scheme or process. You had Mojo presenting it, Pac-Man Cards presenting it. Cade Cunningham comes on, and not only does he hit his auto once, he hits it twice. Out of 5 boxes of those 2 products that they opened, he happens to hit his auto twice. Now, people have said the encased auto, the odds of his card being in the encased auto is quite low. So it's likely to happen, or the odds are high, for it to happen. But that doesn't change the point that you've got an athlete hitting his own cards twice in the same break, right? That seems incredibly strange, and you can't really talk about odds. It's not the fact that that rookie card could be hit, it's the fact that it was hit by him. Like you guys talked to when it came to the kabooms and all that sort of thing, or backyard breaks when it came to them hitting all the big cards. It's not the fact they're hitting big cards, it's the fact they're hitting the big card. And people are not focusing in on that. It's a really strange thing. I'm still shocked that people aren't at least asking the question, okay, does this rig stuff make sense? And from a marketing scheme, it 100% makes sense. So the incentive is there.
How often do you think it happens? Like, there's probably been a half dozen videos that this person hit this person that hit this person hit this. And sometimes I'm even probably 50-50 on these things. How often do you think that this is actually going on? That somebody is getting a loaded box? In this case, it would be, may not be from Panini. I guess Whatnot could somehow figure out a way to load up this box. But how often do you think that this is actually happening?
It's probably too hard to say, to be honest, but it's a thought process I've had since way back in 2015. So I was busting breaks heavily here in Australia back then, and just the number of boxes we got here in Australia that seemed to have loaded cards, which was an emerging market, that is when I started raising questions. I'm not sure how often it happens. You know, this one, it may not have been Panini, and maybe it doesn't make sense for it to be Panini. Could this have been a resealed box by Whatnot? Sure, but if it was, that's a really dumb marketing scheme, in my opinion. It's a hard thing to put a finger on, but if you're looking at it from an incentive perspective, it makes sense. And I think that incentive only grows through the likes of Fanatics Live, when they've now got a platform to funnel cards to big breakers, because they make money by selling the box to you, and now they make money off every single transaction that occurs on that platform through commission. You know, there's an incentive there for them to want to funnel things to maybe certain individuals to get everyone flocking it and paying the top dollar for it. So I'm not sure how often, but I'm confident that it's happening. I'm just not sure, again, how often.
I think Fanatics is launching their live box break program at the MLB All-Star Game in Seattle. I believe it, whenever that is, this weekend or next weekend. And I think some group breakers are going to be there opening product live. I think it'll be very interesting to see how those breaks kind of turn out, because I would assume that Fanatics. yeah, I'm thinking maybe, should we pull that? Should we try to get some?
Yeah, can we buy a spot tonight? Probably.
No,
let's see, where are they going to be at? Seattle. So you want the Mariners, and there's probably going to be Julio Rodriguez 101s popping out of there.
Right, and Ohtani. Yeah, Ohtani will be sitting there opening the box, and so a card of his is going to come out.
Trout.
Colin, you've been listening to this conversation with our boy Dan the Card Man. You got any thoughts?
I guess my only thought on this Cade Cunningham one, was there a clear sponsor of this? Like, how did Cade come there? Like, was he there sent by, like how did the connection between Cade, Packman, and Mojo come about? Did Mojo see him at a card show, or like how did that all get? Like, who was the sponsor of that event? I guess.
My understanding was Whatnot themselves. It was all facilitated by Whatnot.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Did he open cards with anybody else, or was it just those guys?
My understanding, again, just those guys. I think they did it over a few days. I know Packman also opened a bunch of boxes in the lead up to the break, and basically every base card of Cade that he would hit, Cade would sign, and then they would do a giveaway. I don't think many base cards were hit. Surprise, surprise. It's just an interesting one. Again, at best, it's a huge coincidence, but when you're hitting, when the athlete is hitting himself twice, like, how can you not raise eyebrows about that?
You've been making a lot of content today. You had one on sports card influencers and accountability. We talk a lot about Jeff Wilson all the freaking time, but what is your thoughts on kind of the sports card content landscape? You kind of got the positivity police, still kind of wanting to make sure that everything's going well and everything's happy-go-lucky and can't wait for the national in 4 weeks and buy into my break and buy into my market movers. And then you have guys, I don't want to lump people together, but you're covering topics that probably won't appear on Sports Card Investor, typically. Certainly not a standalone video. What are your kind of thoughts on the overall content landscape? YouTube, people are making content, haters.
Yeah, I think in terms of the positive policy, I think they need to be doing a lot better. I think it's quite poor across the board. I think there's self-interest across the board. Again, that's no surprise. I think a lot of that stems from the fact that during the last 2 years, you had people get thrust into a platform that are not educated. And when I say educated, I don't mean stupid. I mean educated in the sense of knowing the impact their voice has on their viewers and things like that. And I think it's like you've said before, a good old boys network where they're all protecting each other now and having those kinds of conversations, shutting people down that sort of don't know what they're talking about because they're just haters or the tinfoil hats. I think it's pretty poor. And I think a lot of it was built off the back of, low effort content that had high reward. I just get really frustrated with the amount of self-interest, to be honest. So I think it's pretty piss poor across the board from the people, at the forefront of the hobby in terms of content creation. Hobby's fun, collecting cards is fun, but I just think they need to have more questions asked of them, right? You can't sit back and hate on Sports Card Radio. You can't sit back and hate on me or AIH Sports or many others for being, negative. Asking questions is not being negative. And I think if you're going to ask us questions in terms of being too hateful, you need to then ask the same questions of them for being, too bloody positive, or, the number of sponsors that these guys have spruiked for and talked to that really haven't panned out and cost people a lot of money, right? There's way too much of that's going on as well. So I think it's pretty piss poor across the board.
When did you start making videos? Just so I have a frame of reference of when you kind of came in and started making vids.
I had the 2-year anniversary like 2 days ago or something. So I skipped 2020. So I was still in the hobby, but I went through a pretty crazy thing at work where I was still considered, what's the word? Like mandatory to go into the office and things like that. So I had a really big project at the time. So didn't really make content, but it was on my mind for quite some time, but it's 2 years. So I missed most of the hype train, to be honest, in terms of content creation and all that sort of thing.
And then how else are you staying involved in the hobby? You're making videos, but are you also buying cards, selling cards, collecting cards?
What? Collecting cards my whole life, buy and sell all the time. It's a bit slow here in Australia because cards are very expensive, and I use ship my cards, so I'll buy cards, get them shipped there and bring them home, 3 or 4 times a year from the States. So it's mainly like Instagram, to be honest. I consume a lot of content in my downtime, but I've been a collector my whole life.
Explain the ship my cards process to somebody that doesn't know. You live overseas. Explain that process to just somebody so that they understand how that works.
Yeah, so it's essentially a mail forwarding service. So basically, you sign up, they give you a US address. When you're buying cards on eBay, you put that address in there. So all the purchases get shipped to them. You pay a fee, it's like $1 or $2 per card. I think they've just raised it again. They hold it for you for as long as you want. And then when you're ready to ship it home, you basically pay a shipping fee and they ship it all back home to you. So they've got a location in Arizona and Oregon, so you can avoid sales tax if you want. Obviously, you have to pay the GST when you import it back home, but it makes buying cards so much more affordable, because if you were to buy a card, say you're in Europe or Australia or Asia, eBay sort of forces sellers to use the global shipping program. So you go from paying, $30 USD to get one card shipped home, and it takes 4 weeks, to now having it shipped to, ship my cards. It gets there in a couple of days, and then if you use the FedEx option, you get it door to door in like 3 business days, which is insane.
Are there card stores there? Are there card stores there where you can go in and physically buy cards? What do they sell? What are they selling in there?
In Australia or ship my cards?
Yeah, in Australia.
Yeah, we have Cherry Collectibles is the biggest one that I'm sure you guys have heard of. They've had lots of accusations in the past about stealing rookie cards and things like that. But they're the biggest one. They've got 2 or 3 stores, I think. Everything's popular here. Australia is pretty sports mad. So the US sports, particularly NFL and NBA, are huge here. You'll get really big followings. Same with European soccer. We have a big expat here from Europe after World War II, so that sort of makes sense. But Aussies are crazy when it comes to loving sport, right? So it's honestly everything. It'll shock you. Like if you guys ever come here for a holiday or you want to see what a card show looks like, you'd be shocked to see how big some of the cards are here. There's big time Jordan collectors, and all that sort of stuff. We have a very collector-focused mindset in Australia. The investing side of things has kicked on, but not as much as what you think. You come to a show here and you'd be shocked at how big boys some of these cards are.
That's crazy. What are you excited about working on? What videos are you working on? What hot stories? You got any breaking news for Sports Card Radio? What are you working on right now?
There's nothing right now, actually. I don't spend a whole lot of time researching a video. Like obviously I spend time researching, but when it comes time for planning ahead, it's usually 1 or 2 days before. So I don't have anything off the top of my mind right now that I can think of. I'd probably like to do a follow-up on this whole Geoff situation, because I want to talk to the issues from an auditor's perspective a little bit. Other than that, nothing else right now. Obviously, if PWCC get back to me, I'll talk to that. I've seen some comments in there around, BGS and the issues with soccer cards. That's a pretty big problem. You're talking millions of dollars of fake stickers being graded by them. So I might talk to that again. I've talked to it before. A few issues like that. But like I said, I sort of will see something and then just record my thoughts.
You have any advice for people who want to make this type of content where you're kind of getting on here, and I don't want to call out people, but you're kind of making people aware of things going on? Hey, there's these two cards that are, very similar. Hey, there's these backdoor cards. You have any advice for people who want to make that type of content? I bet you have some haters, and you probably get a lot of comments and a lot of reaction to some of this video, and you got your email blowing up. Well, you got any advice for people who maybe want to jump in this and do this?
Yeah, I think just do it, right? If you've got thoughts to share, just do it. And I know it sounds easier said than done to ignore people, but I'm pretty good at keeping things out of sight, out of mind. My day job is quite hectic. So, when I've got people shitting on me, it's easy for me to ignore them, right? I don't really care because, the point of making the content for me is to try and educate and uplift. So if you want to join in on that conversation or share those thoughts, just make a video, be consistent. And I think sort of things, speak for itself. So people are sort of craving this kind of information because we've had people over the last 2 years not really present things from this perspective, right? And that whole positive posse, I think, is the way to refer to them as, have caught on to this, because I think you've seen them now catch on and start talking about very similar things themselves. The only problem is they do it with half truths, right? They won't tell you everything because they've got, too many sponsorships to try and protect. So just basically do it, as Jordan said.
You know what? It's always been like this.
Yeah.
It's back when we were doing the podcast back in 2012, there would be people who would run to defend BGS and run to defend Panini and run to defend these grading companies at like every moment and every opportunity they got. And these were just sometimes like random collectors or like random Twitter handles or something. There's just been a legion of people willing to basically make excuse after excuse for anything any card company does. Any group breaker that messes up, they're just there defending them. I can't tell you, when Platinum Card Breaks was going through his thing, I mean, I had people in my inboxes, oh, you talk about him all the time. Oh, why do you keep talking about him all the time? You're up his butt. You're jealous. You're this, you're that, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's incredible what you have to deal with just to sometimes get the word out about stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's useful to know about things like this. People are actively buying these cards. Buying these cards.
But what's bad about that is you've still got people now trying to diminish this and say, well, who cares? Or it's not a problem. Or if Topps have replaced the cards, what's the big deal? Like, you've got people that are still trying to squash that kind of messaging and say it's not a problem. But like I said, that's happened for a long time.
I think them replacing the cards almost would be the worst thing, because now there's going to be, a double superfractor.
Yep.
There's going to be 500 purple parallels instead of 250. So I think replacing would be almost the dumbest thing. They should just take it on the chin and say, hey, we 5,000 cards are missing. Sorry, like, well, well, you're still going to buy it. I mean, people are still going to buy this stuff, right? I mean, you've seen that over the last couple of years. People are going to buy this stuff either way.
Which is like another huge pet peeve of mine, because the messaging around that has been crazy to me. And I know there's just issues across the board with this industry. Again, it's nothing new. It's just, easy for me to spot a lot of this stuff because I'm an external auditor. So literally most of my job is looking at business processes and understanding, risks and what could go wrongs and policies and procedures. So when I see mistakes happening from these manufacturers and from these graders, it's easy for me to sort of pinpoint, why things go wrong. A bit of a tangent, but you go back to that whole baseball card exchange situation. When the whole Logan Paul thing dropped, I had hardly any views back then, but literally the first thing I saw when I heard of that was that I'd be pointing fingers at their, sports card boxes, right? Because again, I'm bringing up something old, but from a risk appetite perspective, if they don't have enough, things in place to get comfort over something that they've never graded before, i.e. a Pokemon case, that should then raise concerns over their existing processes because it probably tells you there's gaps there. And then lo and behold, that happens again with some of these 86 flea boxes, right? So there's just issues across the board. Like I said a bit earlier, they need to uplift their risk appetite because it's not where it should be. And, if Fanatics want to go ahead with their IPO, this was something I was going to talk to today as well. If they go ahead with their IPO, their process, when it gets listed, because it'll have to fall under Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX testing, very stringent regulatory requirements, very stringent, auditing standards, manufacturing at tops is going to get uplifted to the freaking moon. It's going to cost them so much money to uplift all these processes. They're not going to get away with this kind of bullshit anymore. And I think that's also why you've seen eBay move the way they have as well.
Which company in the hobby, this is a tough question. Which company in the hobby would you want to audit the most? If you were just given a free roll and you could literally go, you could go to Geoff's backyard, you could go to Panini, Fanatics, Backyard Breaks. I mean, we got a lot of choices. Sports Card Radio. I mean, who would you want to audit their financials the most?
I think at the moment, I'd say Whatnot, just based on the issues we're seeing, because I think based on the way they've moved, that's where I see the biggest risk of fraud, and fraud being the main driver for why you want to look into things. But again, the same thing with Panini and PSA. So I'd say those three, but top of the list at the moment would be Whatnot. If Fanatics get listed, they would be my number one. Just because I have no doubt that I could see things and be able to tear some of these businesses to shreds, to be honest. Just based on the mistakes that have come through, their process isn't anywhere near where it should be. And I think that's fairly safe to make, especially with companies like PSA, where they're not just grading things inconsistently. They're shipping cards to the wrong customers, they're mislabeling cards, they're losing cards, they're damaging cards. It's an issue across the board. So I'd have my way with every single one of them, to be honest.
Boy, that would be fun if we could just send Dan the card man loose, right? On all these companies, on Geoff, on Panini, on Topps, on Fanatics, on PWCC. I mean, we could just send Dan the card man loose, and then you could do these like exclusive videos. The audit is in.
Yeah, do a live one. It'd be good fun, to be honest.
God,
I think you'll see some things out of Fanatics though, with them getting listed. I think Fanatics Live and then also Topps are going to be impacted heavily with regards to the standards they need to implement and all that sort of stuff. I think you're going to see some things come off the back of that, because it's not going to be an easy process. To give you some context, right? Before being listed, your payroll process might have one or two people involved there, right? Or if you've got a payables process where you've got people paying invoices, it might just be one person and you have no segregation of duties. But then to get listed, you need to maybe have 5 or 6 people in there. You need to have change management controls. You can't have people pay invoices themselves. You need dual authorization, all this sort of stuff. And when you think about, all the integral pieces to these businesses, which then would fall under this scope, you're talking about a huge uplift. Like it's going to be ridiculous the amount of work they have to do to get ready for this kind of thing. So I hope people are keeping that front of mind when it comes to seeing Fanatics get IPO'd and then hopefully get listed, because it's going to change significantly.
did you see Michael Rubin's party that he had? Did you
Yeah,
catch any of that?
Yeah, lots of
Holy
questionable
Lord.
photos.
Oh, I think it's going to be a field day to just run, any mistakes Fanatics make. And boy, this guy's living a pretty fast life over there. It's going to be fun, don't you think?
He bought that, didn't he, off someone, the White Party? Who used to run it? Or some other famous person, I think. I saw an article the other day that he bought it off someone or took over it. It was a really famous individual that had lots of question marks around them as well. But yeah, some of the photos are pretty funny.
I mean, it was wild. I mean, it was like every celebrity that basically, that you might have heard of was seemingly there, and or athlete.
Yep. Good to be a fly on the wall there, I think.
Boy, yeah, we should have sent Dan the Cardman loose there. Yeah, we could have got J-Lo, Ben Affleck, Tom Brady. I mean, we could have got a lot of questions answered, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have been asking too many questions, to be honest. I would have had a few beers and forgotten about the rest. So
yeah, give me Livy. Yeah, you could give me Livy Dunn's phone number. So that'd be perfect, actually, if you could do that. Colin, you got any
phone number? I'd be keeping it pretty close to my chest.
You got any questions? You got any questions for Dan, Colin?
No, you know what? It's good to see you. Been watching your videos, and it's I know you got a family and stuff, so I'd ask about that, but you probably don't want to share that across the sports card radio degenerates. But look, I'm glad you're continuing to post content. It's where I get a lot of my news. I would not have known about that top story or the Lamar Jackson story if it wasn't for that. So just as a fan, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Same goes to you guys, right? Because you guys also cover a lot of similar topics. And, I don't think you guys get enough credit for bringing this stuff mainstream again. I know you guys had the website and things like that, but, there's a lot of messaging that probably would have been swept under the rug if you guys didn't sort of blow up over the last 18 months. And, we've seen a change now because, like I said, you've got the positive posse now talking about some of this crap. So it's good.
Oh, we got Geoff talking, baby. We got Geoff commenting on our videos. We have the positive posse on full alert, I think, over here. So it's going to probably be a fun rest of the year. We got the national coming up. There's always some. The BBCE 86 box popped out of the national last year. So everybody who enjoys hobby content, you're going to want to be glued to Dan the Cardman's channel actually over the next few weeks, because something is going to happen. Something weird is going to happen with somebody we all know, and it's probably going to be centered around the national, and it'll be fun to talk about. So maybe when something fun happens, we got to have you back and explain some of these stories to me. I mean, the backdoor kid with the college kids, I love that story. The Lamar Jackson, I think I'm still like unsure where the heck these cards come from. I mean, Panini just needs to get out and just, have people are still going to buy these cards. People don't care. These cards still have value, but just get out in front of it and just admit your mistakes. And that way, this person who paid $84,000 for this one, and this dude over here who paid $19,000 for this one, at least they have a little bit of peace of mind and they know what's going on.
Yeah, because if Panini made a mistake, right, and they made two, that's a lot better than somebody patch swapping it. And at the moment, you don't know. So you could have spent $35,000 on a card that's worthless. But if they say, no, we fucked up, we made two, okay, so be it. Yeah, it sucks, but you're still going to get some money back.
Sure. And then maybe they could come back to Golden and say, hey, bro, maybe you kick me down, do something. And that's when you can go back to the grading company, or you can go back to Golden, or you can go back to the marketplace, and maybe something could be done. But Golden's kind of, out here flying in the wind. And I guess PWCC, they sold one of these cards too, because they're like, they don't know what's, going on here. So Panini's got to come out and just say, hey, we made a mistake.
I think it's one of those things where Golden and PWCC will have a provision in place, so it'll cover them, right? They'll have policies that they'll get a refund from the insurer, and I'd imagine if it was a mistake from Panini will then have to kick it back down to them, because you can't be doing that kind of crap. You can't say you've made one and then make two, especially with NT. But again, it's just very odd that Lamar Jackson is the only one to have a duplicate. I find that incredibly suspicious, and both shields look dodgy as hell.
It is weird, and you kind of almost have to go back in time. Lamar Jackson, I mean, he wasn't, Baker Mayfield was picked before him, Darnold was picked before him, Allen was picked before him, Rosen was picked before him. I think he was maybe the fifth quarterback in that draft. He had a decent first year, but he wasn't. There were players that were more hyped. He really kind of broke out, I think, in his second and third year. So it's possible, that nothing nefarious happened, but it is weird that none of these other players, and you were right. I did look at this patch and I looked at other cards, and it didn't quite match up to some of the other NFL patches that are on cards. Like the whole thing's pretty weird.
Every other shield looks like the one you have on screen right now. For that year of NT, they all look like that, including the material they're on, the stitching. I think the stitching's the big tell. This one's quite poor. The rookie material signatures that you haven't shown on screen looks a lot worse. But again, the rookie material signatures on the red foil when it's meant to be on the blue foil. They alternate the foils between inserts, so it's a bit confusing. I talked to it in my video, but it's on the wrong foil. So it looks like someone's noticed and patch swapped it, or Panini just accidentally made two shields, and then when they got to the blue foil and said, oh, we're meant to put a team logo in here, they decided to put the laundry tag in there. It's just a weird thing. It's hard to say what's right or wrong on this one, because these manufacturers are shit enough to make mistakes like this, but then also people are out there and are disingenuous enough to do a patch swap and then sell it to someone. So could be anything.
Could be anything. Freaking weird though. And it
I
sucks
wouldn't be
that
happy if I paid $35,000. I wouldn't pay that much for a card anyway, but I'd be pretty angry.
I just don't know why Panini doesn't come out and say something. It's frustrating to me. But hey, it makes for good content. Yes. So, Dan, you got anything else for Sports Card Radio and the fans and the chat?
No, I think that was it for today. Good chat. This Geoff thing is very interesting. The optics on it, again, are incredibly poor, so I want to see a bit more information, but let's see if we get it, to be honest.
Maybe we will. Maybe he'll go on your channel and do an interview. Maybe he'll come on here. He's got to send me a letter saying that, you know, all this crap that he sent me in December was full of crap, basically. Before
Well,
that happened.
You guys will get a letter, I think, sooner rather than later on this one. But again, just the optics are poor. There's lots of questions that could be answered, but just be transparent about it. Take the emotion out of the situation, Geoff, and then just say it. I know it sucks. Like if he is being genuine, and he deserves the benefit of the doubt from me right now. If he is being genuine, just give us the information is what I would say, because you know, you're a public figure, whether you like it or not, and you need to sort of deal with things you don't like sometimes. So again, it could all be BS, but the timelines don't make sense. You've stepped over your words as well, so it's a bit messy.
Well, and he could have came out with all of this in December, or when people were talking about his PPP loan. This dates back like a year, or a year ago, whenever the ProPublica or whenever the government came out with this stuff. It was like in 2022. I heard people in the sports card world talking about it. He could have like cleared all this up. We would not be sitting here talking about this if Geoff had made all of this clear on his little video over here back in December. We would not be here talking about it.
Yep.
It's the fact that I had to find out about it after the fact.
Yeah, it just comes back to transparency. Nobody wants to be open and honest in this industry, in this hobby, which is no surprising, right? People are like that in life in general, but like, this is what happens when you don't be transparent. You shoot yourself in the foot, 12 months later. So no one else to blame but himself, unfortunately, on that one. And I think just quickly as well, Geoff seems to be quite an emotional person, but sometimes with how he responds to things. He's come out sometimes with comments and then deleted them, or come out and misspelled things or said things that he didn't mean. So I think, again, he just needs to take the emotion out of it and just deal with it. Like, deal with the heat. It's part and parcel of the territory. And, if the things that you guys have said are wrong, prove it. Like, it's not that hard. You don't need to get on a high horse and not want to do anything about it. Just prove it.
Well, and don't accuse us of defamation and intentionally lying about him when there's all these facts that we didn't know, and that, frankly, the facts don't really work out in his favor, especially the timeline when he's got a proof for the loan and then he's talking about 352 employees working for him. There's a lot of ways where what we said, and it really impacts that timeline. So,
yeah, I agree. And going back, because I completely forgot about that whole legal letter thing. But looking at that, reading that, and now looking at the wording, it's not a good look at all. And I think you were justified to go off on your rant earlier, Colin, on how you guys felt about the situation, because there's lots of, like, I wouldn't say backtracking, but clearly withheld information there based on what is presented here and then what was presented by him in those videos, talking about dates and things like that. You can't hide from that, right? Those dates speak for themselves.
It's just wild that I found out about this week. That literally nobody, I had people sending me all kinds of stuff about Geoff, but nobody sent me anything that's saying, hey, did you know that 352 actually built Market Movers and built his website, and he had 5 to 50 employees working there during COVID? And then his whole mantra was, oh, they were separate businesses. And then every single content creator who talked about this and when they just took what he said at face value and they mirrored those statements. Sports Card Radio doesn't understand. They're separate businesses.
Yeah, because I think we had a discussion. Yeah, I think you and I had a discussion on this back when it happened, Colin, on some stories where, at the time I thought this was more ethics than anything else and a fraud issue, but now it very much could be a fraud issue. And when I say ethics, I mean you've got a business owner getting funding from the government when he could have bailed out his own company, right? I think that's an unethical thing to do. If you can afford it, me personally, I'd be trying to cover that cost before going to the government, or at least take the funding when you need it to get your employees paid, because maybe it's hard to get that kind of capital that quickly, and then look to pay it back and not have it forgiven. But I saw it as an ethics issue. Now it's very much potentially a fraud issue based on the timeline and all that sort of stuff. So we need to see details on payroll dates and all that kind of thing, because, if there was, disingenuous behavior there was hanky-panky, then there's going to be a lot bigger questions from others other than, the three of us or other content creators, right? It's going to be questions from, Uncle Sam and lawmakers around the US. So was ethics, now I think it's fraud in terms of what the issue is.
And I think if he just come out with the truth when he said he was going to, we wouldn't be here talking about this. Like, we would not be here talking about this.
I don't get that piece. That's very, again, I've said this before about him. He reminds me of politicians sometimes, like that kind of statement from him of, you know, not disclosing full truths or trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, distract with some wording and try and shift away from the conversation. That's politician speak. So, again, if he was being genuine, he's dug himself a grave by saying that, in my opinion.
It's a fun situation. I mean, it's not fun for Geoff. You know, obviously it's not fun for him personally, but the dude has 250,000 subscribers. He's, you know, maybe one of the most famous people in the sports card world. This is great entertainment and great content, I think, for people watching, probably.
I think he's on a family holiday right now in Japan based on some of his posts, so you probably ruined that. But
well, you know when he sent this over the week of freaking Christmas. So I mean,
right, correct. Sorry, yes.
I wonder how my holiday went and what my family thought about that. So
very good.
Every holiday, Geoff might actually hear from me. So he heard from me on 4th of July. Geoff, you're going to hear from me on Thanksgiving. Geoff, you're going to hear from me on Christmas and New Year's, Valentine's Day. I'm just coming for your neck every freaking time, because I did not appreciate basically being called a liar. And then I had to find out 6 months later that, oh, there's all these facts that Geoff didn't omit. And the fact that, oh yeah, you got approved for a PPP loan and all your employees at 352 were still working at your sports card investor business. It's nuanced. It's more for like a Dateline special or something, or a podcast or something, but it's interesting. And you're right. He does get emotional. Geoff does get emotional kind of when he attacks him. And I could see how that can happen. I don't blame him for that.
You can't begrudge him for that at all, but it's more like you've got this huge following. I think you just need to be extra careful, right? You can't let feelings get in the way of things. Obviously you can react how you want to react, but when it comes time to then presenting your message to the viewers or to the people out there, you need to take the emotion out of it, because if you're reacting, right, you then say dumb things like he may have said in this instance, right, where he's not disclosed full information because he was so quick to rush out and talk to something without thinking through, right? Now he's got a problem almost 12 months later or 8 months later, whatever it is, because maybe he reacted too quickly in the past. It's like, no, sit back, take the emotion out of it, and then maybe try and talk to it. But I don't know, it seems to be an MO from him in terms of reacting super quickly and then saying some very dumb things.
I think his self-awareness is a little low too, because it's like, dude, you got a $2 million PPP loan. You're over here flexing how you bought $2.5 million in cards. I mean, we've seen the videos, Geoff, and you're over here on IG flexing. This isn't the only trip that he flexed, that he went on conveniently right after his PPP loans got forgiven. This is one of the trips he went on to Colorado. Literally, you could look at the dates of the Instagram post, and then you can go back and look at when these were actually forgiven, and they line up here, forgiven February 3, 2022. So you can see here's a month later, dude's over here chilling in Colorado, and you could look through his Instagram and, oh, he's over here chilling over here, still in Colorado.
Yep, and it's not just the traveling, right? Some big purchases tied to some of those dates as well. So it's not, the optics again are terrible, and he needs some more self-awareness, I think.
I think some self-awareness would help. That, hey, buddy, you got a $2 million loan paid for by the government for the business that helped you, that basically built Market Movers and your website. So your company was built with help from $2.2 million from the government. Have a little self-awareness, Geoff. Have a little self-awareness that people might scratch their head and be like, God, what's going on? And then you go spend $2.5 million on cards at the very peak of the market. At the peak of the market. Literally. Geoff, have a little self-awareness. That's my message to Geoff. I don't know if you have anything to say to Dan. Dan, if you have anything to say to Geoff, he's probably watching.
No, I think it would just be more transparent. I think I told you at the start of the show, he did message me this morning because he saw that I was coming on. I think he basically sent me the same message that he left on your video. But my response to him was that I don't think this thing's going away, and I think he needs to be a bit transparent about it. I know you guys said he needs to stop talking about it, but I think for his own sake, I would say if you're that confident and you're that happy that you've done nothing wrong, then just present the pay slips, present the transactions, redact them if you have to. And that might not get people to stop talking about you or stop coming after you for this thing, but just be transparent. It's not that hard. You're a public figure. You want to be somebody that has 250,000 subscribers. You want to be somebody that's seen as, the face of the hobby. Your app is trying to be the face of the hobby when it comes to market analytics. Like, sometimes you have to just bite the bullet and deal with, things head on. And I think this is one of those.
I mean, it's $500 a year to join his site. I mean,
yeah, it's not freaking cheap either.
So it's
I know there
not
was issues
cheap.
with the app, with how it was getting data and things like that in the past, and it used to have issues with disclaimers. I think Ziggy did a video on that at some point. But again, lots of things to press buttons on with Geoff, and he seems to be willing to have conversations on some of these things. But again, with something like this, just be transparent, have the conversation, and then we'll go from there. Another day, right?
And self-awareness, bro. You got a $2 million PPP loan. You're charging $500 for a sports card app. Like, people, bro, are not, they're going to question your motives. They're going to question what you're doing, Geoff. So if my advice to Geoff is just, hey, bro, have a little self-awareness. Dan the Card Man isn't charging $500 a month for anything.
Yep.
Okay. It's not $500 a month to join Dan the Card Man.
I think that's where some of the issue comes from as well, because people will see him, right, and they'll hate on him for things like that app, right? And I think that's justified, like getting angry about these kinds of things. And then it sort of all compounds. They see him going to shows and maybe spending big money and maybe are somewhat jealous, or they're not liking how he's presenting his content. They're not liking how he's interacting with others at shows. They've got all these grievances with him, and then they see things like that loan and say, well, hang on a minute. That makes me angry because my family struggled during the pandemic, right? Did you take this money and buy sports cards with it? Did you take this money and build your app with it? Right? That's why people are upset, and you can't begrudge anyone for coming to that conclusion or thinking you're doing those things, right? Because that's what it looks like on face value. So that's why you need to be transparent. And like you said, have some self-awareness on the whole situation. Like, people lost their jobs during the pandemic. People probably lost their houses, or not probably, they did lose their houses. People couldn't afford to feed themselves. And then you're seeing this kind of money get handed. You've seen businesses get handed that kind of money in the past when they didn't need them. They committed fraud. You can understand why people are angry. They again collect cards because they like it, right? It takes the stress out of their lives. Working manual labor, perhaps collecting cards is all they have from a fun point of view, or taking the stress out of their lives. And then they see somebody come in and present themselves the way that he has, the way that the likes of Gary Vee did. You can't begrudge people for feeling unhappy about the whole situation, or unhappy that they've been priced out of their hobby. Like, there's all these things that sort of build off the back of it that feed why people are angry with him. And then you hear the stories about the PPP situation, and then it's like, okay, what do you expect them to do then?
He seems to just, he gets very emotional, which I actually don't mind at all. He can defend himself, and he can come on and leave comments, and if his lawyer sends me something, he can come on the freaking show. So I don't mind that at all. It's just the level of self-awareness for a guy still to this day charging you up to $500 a year for pricing information you could literally get for free. Where does his prices come from? Breaking news, guys. Golden, PWCC, eBay. He just scrapes the data, or they get an API code. I mean, this pricing isn't fucking innovative. He's just compiling it all together. And we've seen other people do this. Card Ladder, Card Hedge, eBay might even have their own pricing tool now. But it all just comes from Golden, eBay, PWCC. For some reason, ComC could make the best price guide, especially for cheaper cards. For some reason, nobody's knocked on his door. Maybe he's charging them too much for the data. And I would imagine Fanatics, our boy Michael Rubin, is probably going to jump into this space and maybe knock out Geoff sooner or later in the market mover space. Because I can't imagine too many people are signing up $500 a year for this.
I'd be shocked if they have more than one person using that service. Like, who's paying for that in this day and age? Unless you've got more money than sense, right? But I don't know why in today's day and age you need to pay $500 a year to get pricing information. Just go look at eBay, go look at 130 Point. There's your answer.
130 Point. Okay, that's another good site to use. Yeah.
I don't know why. I'd be shocked if there's more than one person using that service whose surname wasn't Wilson.
There are a lot of suckers in this industry, so I mean, I actually
again, that's very fair.
Wouldn't shock me if he has You actually get an exclusive video, members only video. Dan, you didn't know this. You get an exclusive members only video from Geoff. So now this 500 just got that. Now we're priced in, right?
I'd be curious to see, like, if you can pay that $500 one off and then go back and see all the old videos to see if you're actually getting the value out of paying the $500 in terms of that exclusive video. Maybe that's where all his good tips are in that video, or his good investment advice is located.
Well, it would be fun to go back.
Free ones.
It would be fun to go back to his old website where he actually was selling picks. I mean, for a while, this guy was selling picks, and which is we're an hour and 15 minutes in. We're not gonna get into the legality or not of that, but you know, that might have more legal implications than anything he did on the PPP side. So I think there's probably a lot of people who think, yeah, Geoff is going to sue us and all that. I don't think this guy wants anywhere near a freaking courtroom. And then all his books, not only his business books, his personal books will all be filleted out for the world to see on Sports Card Radio. I mean, Geoff, you're more than welcome to do that, because it would provide hours of content. We would get the full accounting of all of your businesses, all of your personal life, all of your employees, because maybe your employees were the ones who committed fraud. Maybe your employees were the ones who helped perpetrate this fraud. It would be quite, you would know better than I would. It would be quite the entertaining thing to go through some of Geoff Wilson's paperwork.
Yeah, it'd be super easy to spot, to be honest. It's not going to be hard at all. Just the timeline alone would give you all the information you need. Like, if you start then finding evidence that supports that what he's saying is true, then the question comes, okay, was the market rate applied to the invoice charged back to 352? Was that in line with normal business practices? There's lots of questions, but it's not going to be a hard thing to resolve. That's why I said all he needs to do is show a bank statement, show a payslip, show the invoice. That will literally tell you all you need to know. Because even if he has used an invoice, right, and he's charged back to the business or paid for the service, that doesn't discount the fact that he may have still needed that, PPP loan, right? It doesn't mean that he used that funding. But again, those are the kinds of questions you want to answer, because again, if that did happen, then you'd ask, hey, Geoff, did you get a salary? What did you use those funds for, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of things to talk to off the back of that, but it's not a difficult problem to get to the bottom of. I think in the comment on the YouTube channel, I think he mentioned that he invoiced 352. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Or vice versa.
He says he paid 352, which opens, I think, up a whole lot of other questions about. It opens actually up more fraud that he could commit. The fact that there was synergy between these two businesses, the fact that he was essentially a client of his own business, and he moved money back and forth.
That's where questions would come as well around. Were they working on this? Like, again, if there was no invoice, that's my question would be, okay, where were they located when they were working on this? Were they working from the 352 office? Were they working from the 352 laptops? Were they using 352 software? Like, there's all these things that you'd ask if you were an auditor on this situation, right? A lot of it comes from the conversation. People think we're just bean counters and we look at the financial statements, but it's literally all conversation focused in terms of where we get all our information from, because we need to get comfort that policies, procedures, employees are in line with expectations and are doing things, above board. So the conversations would break this down really quickly and you'd get the answers you're looking for.
Okay, good. So we're going to get all the email communications that ever happened at 352 from the period of question. We're going to get all the email communication that happened at Sports Card Investor and all of that. Like, if this guy really wants to, sue us for defamation. I encourage anybody who thinks that we're in any kind of legal trouble, actually look up what he would have to prove. Like, we would have to literally be sitting here intentionally lying. Like, intentionally lying with malice, and it would have to impact him financially. If he wants to go to court for that, especially out here in California, Geoff, come on out here. See you in court. File the lawsuit. That would provide hours of content for the sports card world.
Yeah. So, well, it's going to be one or two pay slips, invoice, something like that, bank transaction. That's all he'll need to show, in my opinion. But again, that'll then trigger more questions. So who knows if he responds, but again, if he wants to be, if what he's saying is genuine, the timeline that he's come out with, I'll repeat myself, doesn't make sense because it doesn't appear to be in line with what he previously told you guys and what he previously said in your letter. So he needs to clarify a few things, right? It looks pretty suspect in my opinion, but I'm not sure if of the detail or anything like that. So we need to see it for ourselves.
And Geoff, I just want you to know that you mentioned dibs in here. You said that we should have known that Geoff had all this financial success in life. And you mentioned one of the companies that was successful was Dibs. Geoff, did you know the financial situation at Dibs, that they were going to close down their marketplace when you sent this over? They literally closed like a month or two later. So is this a lie? Is this an intentional lie, Geoff? Putting Dibs as a business that we should have known, that numerous companies you have been involved with. Well, here's one that went broke, Dibs. So how does that prove that you're fucking successful? So Geoff, I'm sure you're watching. Get Jonathan on the phone and get him to drop a new 35 pages that now include these new details. 352, they built your business. You were using them during the pandemic. Got approved April 10th. Video talking about them comes from July 19th. Geoff, you're going to have to add all these details. And Geoff, add what did 352 pay you? What was your PPP salary? What did you get from the government? Was it $250,000 a year? So you got that twice. So you got $500,000 from the government. Just come out and explain it. You said you were going to set the record straight on December 5th, 2022. And here we are, Geoff, still talking about this because you don't set the record straight. You keep saying nothing you say here is true. Here are the facts. Geoff, why didn't you do this back then? Why didn't you give us all the facts back then? And Geoff, we are not here talking about this. We are here talking about something else. We are maybe going to talk about how your card went up and down. Like, we're talking about something else, Geoff, if you just were really clear when you said you were going to be. Instead, I had to fucking find out that your businesses were very much linked. Very much linked, Geoff. 5 to 60 employees worked on your business. And I had to find that after the fact, after you accused me of intentionally lying about you. Was Geoff the one actually lying? That's what I would ask everybody. Was Geoff the one lying in this document? Was he the one intentionally lying? And Geoff knows the truth. Why are we just finding out about this now? Because I fucking discovered the video. Anyway, sorry, Dan. What do you going on another rant about Geoff?
All good. I think we just need more information, at least from my perspective. But I understand exactly where you guys are coming from. The frustration, right? It all makes sense. So it is what it is. Let's see if we get anything off the back of it.
We've been threatened to be sued probably half a dozen times by people in this industry, and none of them, wheels of justice turn slowly, but breaking news, none of them have ever come to fruition. But this one came on the week of Christmas. He's accusing us of lying. He said he's going to tell us the truth. He said he's going to set us the story straight, but he never did. He never did. And then his timeline doesn't add up. He says he began phasing them out. Well, Geoff, here you are talking about them when you got the PPP loan. How separate are these businesses?
Yeah, I would show that pretty clearly.
I would stop talking if I was Geoff. I mean, I would just stop talking because it seems like the more he talks or the more that comes out, it's actually, it looks a little shady.
Yeah. So, but I think it's also because he reacts like super emotionally and quickly as well. I think his team needs to sit on it for a few days, get the invoices, get the bank transactions, talk to it. Okay, if you don't want to show it, don't show it. But I don't think it's going to change anything in terms of people going after you. But you need to give some peace of mind to the whole situation. I don't think you can solely rely and say, well, if I did something wrong, the audit from the government is going to find it, because their approach is not going to identify issues like this, right? So
I think the optics of getting $2 million from the government and you're over here flexing your sports card purchases and kind of, he is who he is. That's going to, it's not to me what he do was fraud or not. That's his kind of argument with us. I think it's just the optics of, dude, you got $2 million PPP loan. Yeah, you bought all these cards. Like, I don't care if it's legal or not. I actually don't give a fuck. People can still talk about it. People can still comment about him. because the optics of it look absolutely freaking horrible. It just looked horrible. Let alone if we want to start talking about if there was actually some fraud or some legality going on in here.
Yep.
What a fun sports card world.
It never lets us down, right? There's something every few weeks that pops off, which is good. It gives me something to talk to, take my mind off life. It's good fun.
Well, we got the national coming up in less than probably about 3 weeks here. So there's going to be something that happens. A box is going to get open and it's going to have different packs in it. A breaker is going to dip a pack. Somebody big time in this industry is going to make a huge mistake or say something stupid or be caught on camera doing something stupid.
But we had 3 dodgy boxes last year, didn't we? There was 2 86 Fleers, plus there was that Prism box that had the Austin Powers cards in there.
Correct.
There's going to be something, right?
Something's going to happen. The show is so big. I mean, stuff used to happen back in 2012 when there was nobody there. So with how many people are there, thousands of people showing up, there's more dealers, 200,000 more square feet this year. Everybody goes there to try to make a name for themselves. I mean, maybe we'll get C. Blaz and Ken Golden with their shirt off dancing. I mean, we're going to have something to talk about, I think, on Dan the Cardman YouTube and certainly Sports Card Radio.
We might get C. Blaz versus Santiago Sports doing a head-to-head. Maybe they can do their boxing battle finally.
Oh, then I might have to fly out. I might have to fly out to Chicago for that. If there's a boxing match between 2 influencers, I mean, I feel like I almost need to. That's worth the trip. That is worth. Please, guys, C. Blaz and Santiago, if you're watching, get that locked in and loaded. Like, I will fly out to Chicago. I won't even go to the card show. I just want to go to the fight. Forget the card show.
I'd fly to the States for that.
Yeah, you're into. We'll sit ringside and announce it. So, Dan, you got anything else for the faithful at Sports Card Radio?
No, I think that's it for now. If they want to see more of that content, come check me out. I've had someone message me on Instagram. I think their comments have been banned, but they want me to answer when the last time my team won the premiership was 1986. I don't need to be made fun of for that. The Parramatta Eels, you can see them behind me. I'm a tragic. We've shit the bed a couple of times in the finals. So think of us like the Boston Red Sox in terms of what they were when they had the curse of the Bambino. That's what we're like, basically. So everyone loves to hate on me for that.
Well, there's always hope. That's the fun thing about sports.
Hope,
there's always hope. And you guys have made a finals a couple times, so you're not like in the basement, I guess.
Yeah, no. Well, I've been a season ticket holder for like 20 years now, so most of those years we've been at the bottom of the barrel. Last year we made the final, lost to our biggest rival, so not good. The game was over after 20 minutes. It's an 80-minute game, so I sat there in the stadium depressed for 60 minutes drinking a lot of beer, which ended up being pretty good, but yeah. It's part and parcel of being a sports fan, I guess.
Those are tough ones. Yeah, I had a tough one, Giants-Dodgers Game 5 that I went to, that it was just that walk from San Francisco back to my car was, I still remember that. I still want to shed a tear about that. So sports will do that to you, that's for sure.
Well, we again, it might not be of interest, but we lost one in 2009. We were last the year before, ended up making the final the following year. We lost by 7 points, and then it found out in the off-season that the team we lost to was cheating the salary cap by like 40%. So they stripped them of the title, but didn't give it to us. So just that's part of the curse of being an Eels fan, unfortunately.
That's when you go burn down the other team's stadium, I think, after that happens.
Well, they're based in different states, so it's a bit hard, but
we're sending nukes over with that. Yeah, we're doing the nukes. That's rough. Well, yeah, they need you to audit those sports teams. It sounds like they needed you to go through that salary cap real quick.
It was actually pretty funny because they had 2 separate books. And they only discovered it by accident because the secretary was like, "Oh, do you want to see the other set of accounting books?" And the auditor was like, "What do you mean the other book?" "Sure." And they checked it and they found, 7 years of like systematic fraud and pervasive fraud, paying players outside the.
Sounds like the sports card world.
Votes. Yeah, same sort of shit, to be honest. So pretty funny.
Yeah, that makes for some good content. All right, Dan, thanks for joining us. We will see you soon.
Appreciate
and we'll
it.
be watching your video soon.
Thanks, boys. See ya.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
We'll see you. Well,
that was Dan the Card Man.
That was Dan.
Check out his video. Definitely check
2 hours in.
Love the videos. 2 hours in. We're still talking about Jeff Wilson, baby.
We should probably get to the questions. We'll try to rapid fire through these. Cody Bordeaux has been extremely generous tonight, so we definitely appreciate your support, Cody. $5. Let's go, boys, with the I think the LSU reference there. I told this story before when I met Jeff Wilson at a Dallas card show. He has his son by his side for protection. No one will mess with him with a kid. That's probably true. It's not I wouldn't mess with a man. I wouldn't even mess with Jeff near if he's around his son. No telling what the guy would do. Again, Cody, thank you very much. We'll be refreshing more comments from Cody here in a minute. See you all at the National Card Show. Sounds like if there is a boxing match between Mr. Seablaz and Santiago Sports, we'll come to another question here later. What about a boxing match between Jeff Wilson and a member of Sports Card Radio? Similar to the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg fight.
Yeah, if you pay me whatever those motherfuckers are getting paid, sure, but
that's true.
hell no.
Yeah, I might do it for the right price. I would do it. Cody Bordeaux again. When is the class action against Jeff coming? He owes the community some money. I agree. Probably could. I mean, here's the deal. He was charging for his picks. We kind of gloss over that, and his little fanboys forget about that. You can go in the Wayback Machine, and we have the evidence of that. That's conveniently led out of the 30-page lawsuit. This guy was charging for picks, which is completely against the rules. If you're doing it for stocks, you're doing it for real estate, and you're not licensed. You have to be licensed if you are going to charge for quote investing advice and actually giving advice about trading cards. And he called himself the sports card investor. So he quickly took that down, but he did take money. He did accept money for selling picks, which is completely against the law. And I don't know if obviously to a certain degree that it's probably jail time, but certainly a fine. So Jeff certainly should keep his mouth shut. Auto Dictac University. I am buying Ben Simmons right now. I haven't heard about Ben Simmons in a while. Appreciate the $2, my man. Anthony Leclerc, Tim owns 10 million in SCR stock, at least at this point. Cody again. When you talk to Jeff in person, he just feels like a lying Southern Baptist preacher. Yeah, he's got that little kind of like Baptist. He's got that like Baptist politician kind of vibe where he just thinks everything that comes out of his mouth is the truth. And, and that's often the case when you look at pathological liars, is that they often, they present themselves well a lot of the time. Con men represent themselves well a lot of times and expect and then when you don't agree with them, they start to fire it back at you. Like, what you are doing is illegal. You should be sued. You should shut up. So he has all the traits of a con man, of a criminal. Pete Haynes, never take a sleeping aid and a laxative on the same night, or you'll be in deep Shiite, like Mr. Jeff Wilson. Anthony Kerr, Colin, do your tax returns show over or under 1 million a year in salary? Under this year, if I have a good year, not for this calendar year, it's going to be under. 2023 or 4, we're coming up on 2024. I'm hoping it's over. We'll see though. Doesn't matter. I'm comfortable. So I'm blessed. So I am just curious what the point of calling this mutant out. I totally understand that putting it out for the community, but he obviously covered his ass. He loves us, by the way. Look, he sent us a 30-page lawsuit, buddy. If somebody said you were a liar, you're stupid, you should have known this. I mean, that's what this whole document says. That we should have known this. We were a liar. We said this. This was wrong. This was wrong. This was wrong. We should have went to his LinkedIn page and known this. We should have known this about his wife. We should have known this about the third poop that he took on a Wednesday. He shows all our social media feeds in here. You wouldn't have a problem with a guy doing this to you? Okay, this is bullying.
The week of Christmas. The week of Christmas.
Guys, we're from Stockton. Some of you guys might have sat back in class and got bullied and stuff. And if you did that in Stockton, you got ran over. So what you're seeing here is actually the product of being from the 209. You guys see Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz. These guys don't take crap from a guy sitting in the first row. Okay. It runs through the water in Stockton. You don't take nothing from anybody, especially somebody that sends you a 30-page lawsuit calling you a liar during the week of Christmas. And then we find out 6 months later, he was the one lying. He said the businesses were separate. They were not. He made a comment on our YouTube video today saying that the employees he got help to set up 352, to set up Sports Card Investor. He got help by the 352 employees. And then 2 paragraphs later, he says that they didn't share employees. This guy can't even get his story straight to this day. He's the liar. And then he starts this, nothing what you say here is true. And then he makes a factually wrong statement in his own words. This guy can't get his story straight. Cody, again, overweight Mojo Sports. That isn't content. That is drama. I haven't seen him in a while. Apparently, maybe he slimmed down a little bit. I don't know. Bill Betts with the faux 99 on his couch. Geoff dipped his PPP. That is factual. Thank you, Bill Betts, for the 4.99. Cody coming in again. Very generous tonight. Mojo Sports sweating and breathing heavily. It looks a little slimmer, I think. Look, I need to lose some weight, so I'm probably not one to talk. And breathing heavily at shows is not as good as this content. I agree. I haven't watched one of his videos in a while, but look, I'm sure they're entertaining. There he is in the Jeep, looking good, looking fine. I don't know where he's at. That doesn't look like California, but we wish Mojo well. Jay Cyrus with the $5. This is my favorite TV show. We're glad we can provide that entertainment to you. Thank you. And it's really because of you guys. Okay. It's not us. It's the chat, whole community. We appreciate that. Foul Phil with the $9.99. My friend Kevin K listened to Geoff Wilson and had to sell his house. So effed up. I don't know if that's true, but if you listen to Geoff Wilson give you card advice, and you, particularly if you levered up, if you put that on credit cards, you did a line of credit or whatever, you just and you didn't ever sell and you just kind of held on, then yeah, you're going to be down big. And I think we looked at Geoff Wilson's portfolio of the $2.5 million worth of cards he bought. I think they're worth, maybe $1 million at this point, maybe. Cody coming in again. This chat is the reason we need Republican states to create a new country.
I wasn't reading the chat. Were we getting roasted because everybody can't figure out the connection between 352 and Geoff's business?
I mean, I don't know. I think that was only I honestly I think a lot of it is either Geoff's burner account or he has 352. Like he said, he has 60 employees at 352. Some of those are reputation defenders. So they've got 30 accounts across Google and YouTube and Facebook. And like part of what this company does is reputation defending. Come on. I mean, that has to be something that they do. And so they have, VPNs, and they have 90 different accounts for every social media account. So I really think that's actually more what it had to do with. Cody Bordeaux with the $5. Geoff is proof Florida fans are terrible. Go Tigers. I can't wait for college football season. Honestly, I'm looking forward to the NFL season because my team has a chance, but I love college football too. Cody Bordeaux again with the $5. To be honest, I do like graphs in market movers. And look, maybe they are good. I haven't paid $99 a year to try it, but my guess is a lot of the graphs are moving downward, but look, he had a $2 million PPP loan pay for 352 to build the site. So it better be good. I tell you what, David Bosquet, Dan the Cardman, and the Diaz brothers. That's right. That would be a great combination. Steelers 70. Good question. Do the two businesses share the same address? I don't think so. I actually think 352 is a legitimate business. I don't want this to come across that 352 isn't legitimate or Sports Card Investor is not legitimate. Really, the point is Geoff said that these two businesses were separate. He said that in a lawsuit threat. He said that on the couch. He even said it in a comment that he sent today saying that they literally 352 and Sports Card Investor are, quote, separate companies, separate ownership, and separate employees. The problem is you go two steps up and you see, when I first started Sports Card Investor, I used some of 352 employees. So they're not separate. So everything that comes out of this mouth, it very much reminds me of President Clinton and many of the other politicians. And I actually liked Bill Clinton as a president, believe it or not. Matthew Sanders, I agree with taking him to court for discovery. I can't stand that douchebag. His attitude is absolutely atrocious. Speaking to people like trash, I can only imagine how demeaning it is to work for this guy. This is just my opinion. Please don't sue me. I agree, Matthew. That is why when we got this lawsuit threat months ago, and there was people, again, I think Luker Tiger Braun podcast got on there, and they were like, oh boy, those sports card radio guys better be really careful here. And man, Geoff could really pin these guys down, and man, they could get in a lot of trouble. I think one of those guys is a lawyer on that show, which is really, really bad. Okay. Like really bad. And maybe that's why he's podcasting, because he can't actually get any work as an attorney. Because again, for Geoff Wilson to sue us, he has to prove that not only what we said was patently false, but that we also said it with malice and okay, that's hard enough to prove, especially here in the state of California, or really any state. We found in Georgia as well. I know the laws in Georgia, damn near impossible, especially because Geoff Wilson is a public figure. And not only is Geoff Wilson a public figure, but he's got a bigger channel than us. He talks about how much money he has. He's traveling around the country, talks about how he's in his lawsuit. One of the biggest mistakes he made was he talked about how successful he was, and we should have known how successful he was. So how can we be defaming him and causing him damages? He's made so many errors when it comes to these things. He's backed himself in a quarter. And if he does want to sue, he would lose. We would win a judgment. Our attorneys would be very happy, and we'd have a lot of great information about Geoff. Philly Joe with the $10. Dan and SER with the heat. Dan, no need for a thick jacket tonight. Yeah, I guess it's the wintertime in Australia. They're on the opposite opposites. I just had my AC fixed at my house. We had to take a vacation because our AC broke. Brian Bayless, I encourage everyone to write their representatives and demand an investigation into Geoff Wilson's PPP loans. There is PPP loan fraud. Tip line, hotline. The problem is, guys, is the only people I've seen getting busted for this are guys that bought look, if Geoff had bought Audis and strip clubs and stuff like that, maybe he would have got busted. But all the guys I see getting busted for this are black. And, it is what it is. I don't agree with that. But the guys I see getting busted for this aren't white men like Geoff. Maybe that comes later. I wonder how many in this industry took advantage of the PPP loans. And I wonder if those were out shilling for Geoff or just trying to keep the investors at bay because they did the same. Probably why you're getting so much hate. I agree. We talked about how Leighton Sports Cards got a PPP loan. Look, Check Out My Cards got a PPP loan. The
DA Cardwell.
DA Cardwell got a PPP loan. The guy that we duped again, the BBCE got a PPP loan, like at a round number too. I mean, if you took out a PPP loan and it's a round number, you committed fraud, period. Because it's like nobody's payroll comes to an even $100,000. And I think BBC took out exactly $100,000. I mean, that guy's an idiot. So, yeah, a lot of people took out PPP loans, but not a lot of them got down on the couch and denied it and said we were lying and we were stupid. And so that's what makes me think Geoff is, I think most of them are probably guilty of fraud. Geoff, very much so as well. Bobby Bauer, have you interviewed any former 352 employees? Could help, like with PWCC. I will tell you, we may or may not have been in contact with any 352 employees. That's what we'll say right at this moment. We have cards. We always like to have a couple aces up our sleeve here at Sports Card Radio. And aces up our sleeves, for the next holiday. The next holiday that comes around, we'll be sure to ruin it for Geoff. Brett asks, what happens if you have cards in a vault and you pass away? Wasn't stated in your will and nobody knows. I would have, if you have cards in a vault of any value, I would have this all. It doesn't necessarily have to be an official will, and I'm not giving legal advice or will advice here, but I would have this all planned out and written out and all those types of things. More probably better than this, buy yourself a big fireproof safe. They're $1,000 on the low end, $3,000 or $4,000 on the high end. You don't have to take delivery of your cards right away, but get your cards and put them in your own safe. That would be my advice. Hobby Shark, I wonder if the cards being purchased by Geoff are being written off as work-related items that he needs to make content for more fraud, potentially. And the way inventory is counted is he can't recognize the expense until it's actually sold. And so I guess some of this stuff he could sell for a loss and it could balance out. I don't exactly know. But yeah, I would love to see that too. Did he expense the 2.5 million in trading cards? That would be another nice little fraud charge we could tack on. Card Shop TV 2023. What does everybody think about submitting cards to PWCC and Fanatics Marketplace? I wouldn't do it. I mean,
my account was hacked for a month. I emailed them, I chat message. Literally, I mentioned it on the show, and then 30 minutes later, after the show was ended, I got an email saying, like late at night, at like 8 o'clock at night, "Oh, we restored your account. Sorry." And so now my PWCC account is back. So I would be careful with PWCC.
I wouldn't use them. I mean, until they earn your trust is how I would.
If we didn't have the show, I wouldn't have my account back.
Yeah.
If we didn't have the show, my account would not be restored. That's kind of scary for anybody if you have high-end cards, your account could just get hacked one day randomly, and you could not get your account back, and all the money in there, all the cards you had in there, I couldn't access until I literally mentioned it on the show. And then boom, 30 minutes later, everything was fine.
When is the Wembanyama loaded break where he slaps Britney Spears across the melon?
Ooh,
we'll see.
I think our boy's cursed now.
Drama.
I think this is bad. This is bad.
It's a bad start. It's a bad start.
Very, very
already getting
bad
in trouble with the females. Wait till one of them Kardashian girls come, and then it'll be like Devin Booker. You won't see him again. Bobby to Pops breaks. How long do card companies get to fill redemption cards before it's considered fraud? Some have been waiting a decade. They clearly never intended to fill. Isn't this fraud? I would agree. You know, and here's what I would say to you guys is I think if you're buying into breaks and you have redemption cards, you're getting expired redemption cards, or you have one sitting over at Panini for any length of time, I think you're doing the hobby wrong. I don't think that's how you really enjoy the hobby. It's actually how you get yourself in these spots where you pull a sick redemption and then you don't get it. Or you pull a sick redemption, and you have to wait 3 years, and by then the player's turned into Zion, and you could have just bought the card for pennies on the dollar if you had just waited. I wouldn't buy into breaks. I wouldn't acquire redemption cards. If you do get a redemption card, I would immediately sell it until the companies prove that things are different. Because look, we buy single cards and we have fun, and we've been doing this in the hobby for 20 something years, and we buy and sell. And our love for the hobby hasn't gone anywhere. Robert Gallo need to remake Mount Rushmore with SCRAIH and Dan's head. Ryan and I were talking about that the other day. Maybe create like a little bobblehead with the Mount Rushmore, like our heads on it. We were actually going to do a show, and it might have been on today's show. Like, okay, our heads are on Mount Rushmore. And then the conversation is who else, you know, obviously if you're going to have a Mount Rushmore of the hobby, it's our two faces. And then it's like, who else? Then the discussion, it's almost like, okay, who's the greatest basketball player? Kind of starts with Jordan. And then was LeBron better than Kobe? Was, you know, Shaq or Bill Russell? You know, we're like the Michael Jordans of this business. And then it kind of goes.
I'm the Max Christie. I'm the Max Christie of this business, I think.
Well, nothing wrong with that.
Christie.
He's probably doing all right. We saw him in Sacramento. Colin needs to get back on the golf course. Miss seeing that silky smooth swing between the promos. I agree. I need to get back out there. I just, you know, I'm busy. I got some golf trips planned. I'll try to shoot a video. We'll see if they let me shoot at Pebble when I'm there. Crispy Picks. What did you guys think of Dustin Sports Card Dad on Geoff shows? You know, I was watching a couple of his videos yesterday, just trying to catch up on some stuff, and I didn't see that until maybe the following day. I didn't get to watch it. I don't know if it was on Jeff's channel or his channel.
I don't care if people go talk to Geoff or are friendly with Geoff. None of that. That doesn't mean I don't care. I think people should go talk to Geoff. Actually, Geoff, if his lawyer sends over something and says this is all bullshit, he can come on Sports Card Radio and we can have a little lovely chat about PPP and sports cards and investing and his Market Movers app and everything. So I think Sports Card Dad or anybody should be allowed to go, if they want to, talk to Geoff or talk to, frankly, anybody. Honestly, I don't.
Sure.
I think that can be good. That there are conversations being had, and certainly our beef with Geoff or whatever doesn't. If people are friendly with him, I don't freaking care. Like that. This is a small industry, so you're gonna be friends with some people and not friends with the other, and they're gonna commingle. It's kind of like Geoff's business. There's a lot of synergies. You're gonna commingle employees, commingle money in this hobby. I don't have a problem with anybody. He has 250,000 subscribers. Why would you not want to be on his freaking channel talking about cards?
Yeah, might be a good.
That's my
opinion. Move. Might be a good move. What was the big announcement from HGA?
Oh my God, it was nothing. They announced that you could go through and pick out custom labels, which I thought you could already do. It was literally like a total nothing burger. Total nothing.
Buyer's Remorse says, will Geoff make a response video? I don't know. I think if he thinks about it and he cools off, he won't. I think if he's smart, he won't. But I don't really. I don't think he's that smart. Actually,
he should shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that is my honest advice to Geoff: is shut the fuck up. Because the more we talk about it, the more somebody who could actually put you in jeopardy might be watching.
Yeah. Because he can go to jail. Like I don't know if enough people understand this. If he actually committed $1 of PPP fraud, let alone $2 million worth, that is, we're talking years in jail, like actual jail, not he's going to be on parole or he would get sentenced and it would get reduced. No, he would go to federal prison for years. So he should shut the hell up is what I would recommend. Cody Bordeaux, another $5 Mojo Sports. The Sunshine Pumper says this isn't content while he breathes heavily and sweats. There he is. Looking all right. Looking all right.
Looking good. Yeah, he's looking good.
Looking all right. He's looking all right. Geoff is, appreciate it, Cody. Geoff is tampering with SCR guests. That's in reference of Geoff messaging Dan the Card Man, which I thought was interesting. Messaging him the same comments, which again, this comment contradicts itself. Says that he used 352 employees to build Sports Card Investor, and then he later says that they're separate companies and separate employees.
Well, he's really going legal language. It's like I have this company over here and they have employees, and then I have this company over here and they have employees. Geoff, buddy, you own both companies, bro. Like there are more synergies between these two companies than my Beanie Babies business and my sports card business and my chickening business.
And look, at that point, it becomes there's a term for it, and I just blanked on it, but it becomes a related party transaction. And if you're a public company, you have to actually disclose these things. Like if the CEO has another business and you buy marketing services or whatever, you have to actually disclose this, and you have to go through this whole process. There has to be a fair bidding process, etc. There's actually rules behind this thing. I don't know if it applies to private businesses, but for public companies,
maybe it does when you got a PPP loan. I mean, if you got a PPP loan,
possibly as well. There could, I don't know if they're written out to that length, but related party transactions actually, can be interesting. When is the Geoff versus Colin Octagon match? I'm ready. Let's go. I'll get in the Octagon. I mean, come on, a guy from I'm from Stockton. Where's he from? Look what he's doing.
The South.
So I would crush this fool. Give me like 90 days to train.
Well, we could get Nick or Nate probably to train us. So
exactly, I would literally be able to go train with Nick or Nate Diaz. I could literally make one phone call and then go train with Nick, probably for free or for a bag of whatever. And 90 days, give me 90. The problem is I have so much work. Like if I didn't have anything to do, I would do it. I don't want to sound like I'm a PWAD, but give me 90 days. I'll bring him into the ring. Cody Bordeaux again. What is more embarrassing for Geoff, his Tebow PC or his BPP loan line? At this point, I don't know. At this point, the Tebow PC, depending on what he
Tebow's
paid for
okay.
it. Yeah, I
Tebow's
mean, if
cool.
he bought him at the bottom, it's probably not too bad. But this line about the PPP loan stuff is just getting embarrassing. Leaving a comment on our channel today that contradicted itself in 2 different paragraphs. It's really bad. Cody Bordeaux again. I think this guy's in for maybe $100. Mojo Sports out of shape versus Card Collector 2. Who are we putting money on? In that
Mojo.
case, I think I'd
Too
probably
big.
take Mojo. He looks so much bigger than
He's
the other
too
guy.
big.
The other
Yeah.
guy is pretty short too. So, and he doesn't look like to me like he's a guy that's ever tried to throw a punch in his life. Not that Mojo ever has, but Mojo's big. And I can think, I mean, I don't think Card Collector 2 is smart enough to win that fight. You got to turn that into an endurance fight. Mojo would get tired, drop his hands, then you clock him. I don't think Card Collector 2 doesn't seem like the sharpest tool in its head. Smoke and Scan, my boy, was checking out a couple of his videos the other day. 1999 hobby is in a sad state. When you prop up those 5 turds on a screen, I can't remember when that was. Was it? Oh, it's the cards of the influencers. I think is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
These guys. Yeah, I think that the first girl, she's going to be the one breaking on the Fanatics Live. She's going to be the Fanatics. Is this Mama Breaks? Is that what her name is?
Yeah.
Okay, so she is going to be one of the influencers breaking the Fanatics Live app at the All-Star game. So that's interesting.
Yeah. We'll have to check that out. Maybe the loaded box. I mean, we got to see what's loaded.
Yeah.
What's not.
Well, I want to buy in. I want to try.
I know we should buy in.
I want all the spots.
I would recommend. This is the one time we recommend buying, guys. Try to get in on the first loaded breaks, guys.
Yes.
Come on.
The
guys.
only time to buy into breaks is when it's promoted by somebody. Buy in for sure. Smoke and Scan. Thank you very much. People should check out his channel here on YouTube. Wifes with the phone 999. Rule number 1 at SCR, we don't simp. I'm commingling this super chat to my other LLC. Hey, this is an advertising write-off right here. The $49.99, absolutely a advertising write-off from Wifes. Thank you very much for the $50. We very much appreciate it. And I was laughing at several of your comments tonight, so I appreciate the $50. Sharper Vintage Baseball Cards with the $5. Thank you so much. We definitely appreciate that. Kevin Jones with the $5 hanging out with my 80-year-old parents and hoarding my Heartland statues from the 1990s.
Heck yeah.
Keep collecting. Guys, thank you very much. Cody, the rest of you, wives, Smoke and Scan, many of you that donated via the super chat, Philly Joe, very much appreciate it. Foul Phil, Bill Betts, Cody again and again. Autodidact University, thank you very much for the super chats. Very much appreciated. Those go to Ryan's very expensive lifestyle that he lives.
Some days.
And so we definitely
depends what girl I'm out with.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you very much for tuning in. I think that probably wraps it up for today's show. We will see you again next Thursday. We'll see what comes of this. Jeff Wilson can certainly come on the show if his lawyers send us something in the mail. We'll see if Jeff sits down on a couch and lies again like he did 6 or 7 months ago. And we'll see what happens. But until then, guys, I think it's only fitting we play the song that we've all got to know and love from B-Side called Ruin the Hobby I Love. And the first line is, what is going on with that PPP? And 7 months later, we're still wondering what is going on with that 2.3. Maybe we'll find out more during the course of the week. Stay tuned to the channel. But until next time, next Thursday, we'll see you again soon. Thank you all for your support. We'll see you again soon.
But for now, we are out of here.
B-side on the beat.
What's going on with that PPP? You done a lot of talking, not a lot to see. Up in the millions like 2.3, but Geoff got it all, getting off scot-free. Try to talk tips like we talking about stock, but you're talking about men printed on called stock. When you open your mouth, I take it with a grain of salt, cause the market's down and you're a clown, it's all your fault. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. Did you dip, Geoff? I think you dipped, Geoff. What you talking about? I don't think you dipped yet. Willie's doing shady shit like the GOBs, like his whole failed thing with them NFTs, taking money from the people to pay. Most of them are broke, but that's okay, he's getting money. Even better, tax-free, loving all the stimulus from PPP. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit.
B-side on the beat.
What's going on with that PPP? You done a lot of talking, not a lot to see. Up in the millions like 2.3, but Geoff got it all, getting off scot-free. Try to talk tips like we talking about stock, but you're talking about men printed on called stock. When you open your mouth, I take it with a grain of salt, cause the market's down and you're a clown, it's all your fault. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. Did you dip, Geoff? I think you dipped, Geoff. What you talking about? I don't think you dipped yet. Willie's doing shady shit like the GOBs, like his whole failed thing with them NFTs, taking money from the people to pay. Most of them are broke, but that's okay, he's getting money. Even better, tax-free, loving all the stimulus from PPP. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit. Geoff Wilson, Geoff Wilson. You ruin the hobby I love with your bullshit.